never say that I miss you now you've gone away. But I guess that I'm glad you settled down, even if it's with a younger me in the same old town, the same old town. Does she know that she looks just like me? 'Cause baby, it ain't too hard to see. All of our friends find it funny. Can't say I agree. I'm just sitting on the back porch drinking with my new friends. Babe, I ain't heard from you since I don't know when. 'Cause you're busy someplace else making new memories without me. And there's just in my imagination that you look happy. Oh, tell me where the time goes. Am I the only one who wants to know why it's the same old sky, but it's a new whole rare shade of blue, a gray shade of blue, a gray shade of blue, a gray shade of blue. Saturday, mom popping around. Wish we could have talked, but that ain't allowed. You're on a new river now, where it flows, I can never know. I'm just sitting round the campfire drinking with my new friends. Babe, I ain't heard from you since I don't know when. 'Cause you're busy somewhere else where you don't wanna think about me. And I guess I just can't believe that that makes you happy. Oh, tell me where the time goes. Am I the only one who wants to know why it's the same old sky, but it's a new whole grayer shade.
Morning, morning, morning. Where did we leave off?
For some reason, she inadvertently puts on the microphone when we're talking at breakfast. And the next thing you know, she's got this huge thing on her phone. It's terrible. So I'm looking at February. The 13th.
Okay.
You can borrow it. Oh, that's a question for you.
If
If there is room, can Bradley prevent this morning?
yeah, anything we can do to lighten the evenings, I'm happy with that.
Put him in down here someplace.
Thanks. Today is January 20th.
Take my first sip of coffee here. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to day 2 of our second week of public hearings for the Alberta Electoral Boundaries Commission. We are glad to be in Edmonton for the second week, and I want to just give some background of our commission and the work we've been doing and what we expect to complete in the weeks and months ahead. So first of all, our commission was established by the legislature of Alberta, and it's an independent commission composed of the 5 of us, and if you want to see some background on us, you can go to the website. But our task is to basically deal with 2 issues that have been handed to us as part of our mandate. First of all, the Alberta legislature has expanded the number of seats in the legislature from 87 to 89 for the next provincial election. Our task is to draw new boundaries, taking into account those 2 new seats. And of course, individual voters who reside in the electoral division, they are the people that select their member of the legislature to sit in the Legislative Assembly in Edmonton. So we have to deal with the increase from 87 to 89. And to give you some idea about the second challenge that we have, it has to do with population. And to put things in perspective, in 2017, when the last Electoral Boundaries Commission reported, Alberta had a population of just slightly over 4 million people. And they then used the formula based on the population at that time to determine the average number of residents in each electoral division. So as you can see, the math is portrayed there. The average population per electoral division is 46,697. That's not the target for our purposes of effective representation. Rather, we have a range that we shoot for, and that range is minus 25 of that average to plus 25 of that average. As long as we're in that range, we're designing effective representation for Albertans. Fast forward to this commission. The population of Alberta is 4.88 million at this point, and we divide that among 89 ridings, gives us an average of just under 55,000 inhabitants per electoral division. Again, that's not the target. The target is the range of below 25 to plus 25. Our goal as a commission is to fulfill the legal requirements for elector or voter parity in this country, and that is to provide boundaries, new boundaries for the 89 electoral divisions that provide effective representation. So we were appointed as a commission in April of last year, and we have been fairly busy since that time. And I want to touch on 4 things that we have done leading up to our interim report. First of all, we met and discussed the various possibilities as to what standard to use for population. We agreed upon a source of population based on what the legislation requires us to refer to, being the last decennial census, but that was in 2021, so it's somewhat dated. So we then employed the statistics used by the Alberta Treasury Board, Office of Information and Statistics, to update the 2021 census. And that's updated quite regularly on a quarterly basis. So we determined that the most accurate census data for us to use was the census data as of July 2024. After we agreed on some of the ground rules, we then reviewed hundreds of written submissions that were presented to our commission after our website was up and running. From late May to throughout June, we traveled the province, all the way from Pincher Creek to Fort McMurray and down from Peace River to Medicine Hat and the major metropolitan centers in between. We had several public hearings, heard from hundreds of Albertans, and took all that information, both the written form and the public presentations, into account. Then we sat down with the staff from Alberta Elections, who have very sophisticated mapping tools and population data, and they assisted us greatly in preparing our first interim report. That report, which you probably have seen or referenced if you're here and are interested in this process, that report was provided to the Speaker of the Legislature on October 27th of this past year. Immediately he tabled the report and provided a hard copy to each of the members of the legislature, and that is on our website, and the key term is an interim report. It's an interim report in order to get the feedback of Albertans. And in preparing that interim report, we relied on the legislative criteria such as sparsity and density and rate of population growth, communities of interest in the areas, municipalities, regional and rural communities. We took into account geographic features and available means of communication and transportation between the various parts of Alberta, all leading to the task of providing effective representation with understandable and clear boundaries for the electoral map. We then opened up our portal on our website from November 3rd to December 19th for further public input and submissions, and we received in excess of 1,100 submissions on our interim report. And now we're in the final stage, or the next to final stage, before we prepare our final report, and we're conducting public and virtual hearings. Last week we were in Calgary for 2.5 days, and then conducted 2 full days of virtual hearings, and we're in Edmonton early this week, and we will commence deliberation at the end of this week after we complete our public hearings. So that gives you an idea as to where we are at, what led us to this week, and I'm sure you have reviewed the report, and we're now open for public presentations from those who have signed up, and I believe our first presenter is here, Mr. Dwight Dibben. Just make yourself comfortable, have a seat, identify yourself, tell us what electoral division you are in and which ones you wish to comment on.
Well, good morning, Mr. Justice and Commissioners. My name is Dwight Dibben. I am the Chief Administrative Officer for the village of Forsberg in southeast Alberta, currently in the Camrose Electoral Division. And my comments today would refer to both the Camrose Electoral Division as well as the Drumheller-Stettler Electoral Division, which we would like to make representation to. Just by weight of, we did submit the Village of Forsberg a written submission. It is EBC 2025-2-253, which I will be referring to in my presentation. I believe commissioners have it or have the ability to access it, as well as we provided our recommendations on what we consider to be a modest boundary change for these 2 electoral divisions for the next provincial election. I would also, just my brief comments, I would also make note that I am the immediate past public school trustee for the Battle River School Division from Flagstaff County, as well as a volunteer firefighter for the Forsberg Fire Station in our regional service, which has a point of relevance to the presentation that I wish to make. I would say at the onset that Forsberg, in our council reviewing the interim report, absolutely supports the principles that were espoused in your executive summary, absolutely supports the principle of effective representation, and that the notation that absolute parity is impossible. Just as this is true for the provision of public services across the province, we feel it is the same for electoral boundaries. In our written submission, we brought forward to the Commission a little bit about history of Forsberg and the southeastern portion of Flagstaff County, that up until the last, the provincial election of 2019 and the ceasing to exist of the Battle River Wainwright constituency, Forsberg and areas south of it were actually a part of the former Stettler electoral division. You have to go back over 45 years before you would see Forsberg included in the Camrose electoral division. So the genesis behind our suggestions to the Commission, as well as backed up in our submission about recent activities, communities of interest, where our economic development activities have largely resided these past, especially 7 years, have been with communities and rural municipalities south of Forsberg, not those north that are currently in the Camrose electoral division. Some may know, but the 2017 federal policy decision to shut in the coal industry had a devastating impact on our community, as it did with communities such as Hanna, Grand Cache, and others in the province. Council has been working tirelessly over 3 iterations in terms of working with government, working with its neighbors to actually reposition the community and the surrounding areas for life after coal mining. We lost the Paint Earth mine, the Battle River Generating Station, which is located some 8 kilometers south of Forsberg, although it is on the south side of the Battle River and in the Drumheller Stettler riding, actually has an agreement with the Forsberg Fire Department that we are the first responders that actually arrive or respond to an emergency at the Battle River Generating Station. This has been in existence for over 50 years when it was owned by Canadian Utilities. And in fact, there was a gas feeder line break 2.5 years ago that our station was the first on scene. We arrived on site in under 15 minutes and were able to help local services and aspects control the blaze, while other authorities were able to address the supply issue and ultimately arrest the issue. I use that by way of example of demonstrating the ties that we have with communities that currently are in the Drumheller Stettler electoral division going forward. In terms of trying to assist the Commission in its mandate of understandable and clear boundaries, that led us to take a look at what would an understandable and clear boundary change look like for these 2 divisions. And that was our proposal to the Camrose electoral division. And I'm not sure if you have color, but it shows basically a removal of the southern highlighted area from the Camrose electoral division to Drumheller Stettler. When looking at it from the Drumheller Stettler perspective, it really kind of squares the top of the riding, which would in fact make it much more palatable, I would say, easy for an elected representative, regardless of where they would actually hail from or where their constituency office may be in the riding, to actually effectively represent the electoral division with the changes that we are proposing. One aspect too, just in terms of geography, when we look at distance from major centers, Forsberg is actually 20 kilometers closer to Stettler than it is to Camrose. And while Stettler is around 7,000 people and Camrose is around 20, most services that our residents require, whether that be in the way of medical, ophthalmological, physicians, dentistry, although we have a clinic and a dentist in Forsberg. Chiropractor, we have one, but massage therapy, a number of our citizens already go to Stettler rather than Camrose, even though some would look at that and think that that would be the natural trading area for our community. We certainly appreciated the opportunity to take a look at the interim report. Certainly, as a former public service, my last job with the government of Alberta, I had the honor of being Alberta's Public Service Commissioner, and going through a couple of these exercises in my past and presenting to one in Calgary some 20 years ago now, it seems. It's not an easy task. And certainly in reviewing the submissions that came forward, it is not surprising the vast differences of opinion when it comes to large urban residents and smaller rural residents. And in many ways, you have a thankless job, but I do, on behalf of our council, thank you for doing it. One element that we did find curious, I should mention before I leave our submission, we have also advised our partners in our economic development and other activities in the BREOC committee of our presentation to the Commission to solicit their support. That includes Paint Earth County, the towns of Castor and Coronation, as well as some of the other members in the northern part of the current Drumheller Stettler electoral division, and have asked them if they would provide letters of endorsement to the Commission. Of course, councils are just getting back into the swing of things after the new year. We've only had one meeting ourselves, so we hope that those submissions may come back to the commission here in the weeks to follow. We just wanted to make one note of curiosity on our part on the suggestions of the interim report, and that was to make a carve-out of the Camrose riding, basically take a sliver of the Camrose riding north to include the town of Hardisty and a minor part of the rural area south. As the former school trustee for this area, I found that kind of curious. As the communities of interest for the village, or town of Hardisty and surrounding areas, if not Camrose, actually fall into the Wainwright area, which includes Buffalo Trails and other areas along those lines. So I noticed from the public hearing, I believe was held in Drumheller, and my friend Mr. Golka, who made the presentation to the committee along those lines. With all due respect to Mr. Golka and some of the objectives there, more than half of the students in the Hardisty area actually go to Central High School, which is in Sedgwick in the Camrose constituency. About 40% go to Irma, which is actually in the Wainwright, Lloydminster constituency. The same with communities of interest on sports, minor sports. A very few number of students actually go into communities which would be in the Drumheller-Stettler constituency, which includes the Clearview School Division. So I just wanted to make that note, and certainly when it comes from proximity to major centers, Hardisty is closest to Wainwright. It's over 100 kilometers away from the two major areas in Drumheller-Stettler and 70 kilometers away from Camrose. So just for purposes of when the commission goes back, if looking at this, our proposal would bring in the urban communities of Forsberg, Alliance, the surrounding areas, which right now, and I appreciate the comments that the chair made about population and the challenges of population. Certainly since 2021, if you take a look at the most recent estimates to the end of 2024, Forsberg's population is either 807 or 934. So we know we haven't lost that. Our school has increased over 20% in the past 5 years in our K-12 school. So we know our community is growing, and we do have a spur line that's being constructed this coming year. We have pending, once the spur line is done, economic building activities that should be in the neighborhood of $4 to $10 million. The community is growing. And we plan on doing our own census, as now we are required by provincial law, if not later this year in 2027, once these industries have built and started operations, with high belief that we will actually achieve formal town status within the next 3 years. So with that, and with that change, we note that the population numbers, it certainly would not impact the Camrose population, average population. In fact, the reduction to that still has Camrose well within, if not above, your average line, and it certainly serves to bolster the numbers of Drumheller-Stettler, which I understand the Commission's job would need to look at augmenting those boundaries in the population for that riding going forward. So with that, I'll stop. I don't know if there's any questions, but I do thank you all for your time and the opportunity to present today.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Tibbin.
Sure.
Yeah, you noticed maybe a smile on my face
I did.
and my colleagues. I'm not going to exaggerate it, but Hardisty was of some controversy the first time around. I was the only one that took the position that you're taking, but that's, don't tell anybody that. So I'm curious to know, so the rivers are good natural boundaries until they're not good natural boundaries.
Right.
So we've used the Battle River.
Yep.
So you're suggesting hiving off that little tip is it, what's that highway, 60, I can't read the print, 608?
I believe so. I think I...
Is that an adequate boundary then?
Yeah, we suggested that the northwest boundary of the Drumheller-Stettler electoral division, which is just north of Denelda, Township Road 430.
So 430 all the way across?
That's correct. And that catches up to actually Highway 13 just south of the town of Hardisty.
Okay, so continue on, so in one fell swoop, we can solve both of your problems.
Correct. If from a numbers aspect, and given your controversial Hardisty issue, you could easily loop up on either end and include the village of Heisler, as well as the town of Hardisty. Heisler would give you another 160 oddly
Okay.
residents that would go to Drumheller Stettler.
Okay.
And of course, I believe the population of Hardisty right now is some 550 people, give or take. I'm not sure what your numbers of July 2025 suggest. That's a data set that we haven't seen. But that, again, would not be material to the Camrose numbers and their averaging.
Good, well, thank you for that clarification.
Yes, sir.
Any questions on the left here?
Thank you for your presentation. I did study it when I was reading your written submission, and I like the fact that you're asking your partners for support so that nobody's caught flat-footed with a possible change in the riding.
Right.
Just out of interest, what did Forestburg switch to economically after the coal disappeared? In a short answer, sorry, I don't.
Sure. The Battle River Generating Station converted to natural gas, but that resulted in Unit 3 being shut down and a reduced output of Units 4 and 5, which are the only other active ones. Their retirement dates have been pushed out into the 2030s. But since then, the station has been sold to TransAlta, and as a part of their larger acquisition of a number of assets, output from that station has declined very significantly in the last 2 years. We're also an agricultural service center, but with the Battle River Railway, which is a short line operator and building a spur, Ashcore, which is a subsidiary of ATCO, mines the fly ash, which is a byproduct of coal-fired generation. As the plant operated through the decades, fly ash replaced coal in the seams as the land was being reclaimed. Now it's a commodity that's essential in concrete. So fly ash is being remined, bagged, and basically shipped domestically as well as internationally as a necessary building block of concrete, because the world's demand for concrete is not shrinking. So we are looking at a transload facility on the spur line. We have a couple of other companies that have purchased land along the spur line to build once it's in place, that basically are looking at manufacturing commodities and then shipping them by rail.
That's fascinating, thank you, I appreciate that.
You're welcome.
Mr. Evans?
No questions.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Dr. Martin?
Yeah, thank you very much. Really intriguing. I will note, however, that our numbers at the, in this interim configuration Camrose is 54,500.
Oh, so just below your average number.
It's in the target
Right.
range. We're not obsessed whether you hit the number or not.
Right.
But it's there.
Yeah.
And your proposal would strip out 2,000.
Probably about 1,800 is our calculation, yeah.
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 We're pretty close then.
Okay.
Our magic machinery tells us
Okay.
a bit higher. So,
Then we get Hardisty back.
but, I'm intrigued, your remark about Hardisty, from certain points of view, certain communities of interest, Hardisty is linked with Wainwright as much as anything else.
I would agree.
So your line of argument is, the linkages are to Sedgwick on the one hand and to Wainwright on the other, so to toss up which way it goes, but it should go.
Yeah. Or it could stay where it currently
could
is.
stay.
Yeah, that's,
Okay.
when you get into the
Right.
corners of, like we are kind of in electoral boundaries.
Yeah.
And you have, smaller urban centers, we've seen that if you go back even beyond my time, when you've been where you are in municipal jurisdictions. Often those are the ones that get shifted to make those, boundaries and those numbers work.
Yeah, the Hardisty block, so to speak, is
Yes.
along including along the Battle River and the older configuration. That's 900-ish, that whole
Yep.
block. Okay, well, thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Yes, no questions, I guess. And I'm just looking to see if we had a submission from Hardesty. I don't think we did. I couldn't find one, but that doesn't mean.
253?
Way back,
253,
the
that's
first
Forestburg.
round.
Oh,
The
Yeah,
first
right, first
round,
round
I
we had
think,
one.
would be
oh, sorry,
Hardesty.
All right,
yes,
yeah.
sorry, I was
There was a
listening.
specific request, as I recall, from
All
Hardesty.
right, well, that's, yeah, so I will,
Yeah,
won't
we
weigh-
didn't
I
see
won't
a
weigh in
written
on the,
submission from Hardesty.
No.
We just saw the verbal presentation that was made at your Drumheller hearing during the first round, so.
yeah, so yeah, just for your reference, our numbers would say, moving the part you talk about in your submissions, about 2,300 people.
Okay.
South of 430.
Oh, okay.
Intersecting 13. Heisler is 132.
This is close.
32, okay.
So, and that, yeah, so, and so just to be really clear, Heisler is north of 430, but in your view, it kind of fits at Forestburg. If we're gonna do it,
Yeah.
just a little bit of a bump
Exactly,
in.
yeah.
And we're not gonna have dozens of people from the.
And I'm sorry,
village.
Mr. Clark, 2,200 you said would be that sort of?
2,300 would be that
2,300
number,
from-
south of 430
Okay.
on the alignment you talk about going south of Hardesty.
Okay.
Plus 132 for Heisler, and then, yeah, as Dr. Martin said, that Hardesty piece that you would suggest is another 1,000 people.
Okay.
Roughly that bump out there. So,
Great.
again, it's all within the range, although it starts to shift things a little bit.
Yes.
This is, I just want to say thank you for your public service. This sort of really detailed information from folks who live in the communities and tell us exactly how things go is just invaluable. It
No.
really, really, truly is,
Yeah.
because we can look at lines on a map and we can read submissions, but actually hearing from the folks who are there in the communities make a huge difference. So thank you.
No, thank you very much.
Mr. Diven, thank you.
Thank
And,
you all very much for your time.
For people listening into this conversation and hearing the small numbers, it may seem like peanuts. It may seem very insignificant to ridings that have 60-some thousand in the large urban centers. But this is a big deal for large landscapes and people that travel hours to get to their service centers. So that's the conundrum that we face, is how to provide effective representation across the province. So thank you very much, sir.
Thank you
and
very
please
much.
remain if you are able to
I
hear
will.
the other presenters. Okay, our next presenter is not here, but we're going to substitute, just like they do in, we've got a designated hitter, Bradley LaFontaine. We're going to pull you up from this evening, and anybody who makes our evenings shorter, we have an...
Well, I'm not usually early, so I'm pretty proud of myself today. This is good. Thank you very much. I'll be brief today, but my name is Bradley LaFortune. I'm here from Edmonton, Treaty 6. I'm a
Sorry,
resident.
can you spell your last name?
Yeah, for sure. LaFortune.
Oh, okay, thank you, yeah.
No problem. So I appreciate the opportunity to present on the interim report today. I'm here with, I guess, 3 hats on, as many of us wear different hats. I'm a longtime resident and voter in Alberta. Specifically, I live in Edmonton, Strathcona, currently Edmonton, Strathcona, where I live with my family, and I'm the executive director of a small nonprofit called Public Interest Alberta, which is a society under the Societies Act in Alberta. So I want to speak to a few interrelated themes very briefly today. First, I'd like to talk about the importance of maintaining alignment between representation and the material realities and concerns of communities in general within the interim report. I was very pleased to review the interim report's dedication to maintaining and strengthening effective representation while managing to add 2 electoral divisions to the current 87. We also appreciate the Commission's careful consideration of population variance in this regard. 25% variance to us, one way or the other, is high. We've long advocated for a tighter variance of 5%, but I understand that that's just not really feasible given the constraints that you have as a panel. So with that in mind, you know, it is very good to see the commission is considering the sort of, you know, very careful rationale for, you know, going to the outer edges of those variances. And we think that you've done a fine job on that, so kudos. But we do want to state that, you know, Public Interest Alberta has advocated for a tighter variance of 5% on either side. Second, I want to talk a bit about hybrid ridings. You know, going from the current number to expanding that, especially in Calgary. You know, the commission does a good job of highlighting in the report the balance of written submissions that highlight, I think, you know, the general skepticism towards rural urban ridings or hybrid ridings, as we call them here. I share this skepticism in general from a number of perspectives: fiscal, democratic, and representative. And practical as well. In Edmonton and Greater Edmonton in particular, where, you know, I kind of have, you know, direct interest as a resident, as well as a lot of our advocacy focuses on urban issues. There is, as I'm sure we're all aware, a long-term and largely unresolved policy conversation and tension between the provision of services in Greater Edmonton and within Edmonton, considering the tax base issues that we have. And so I'm sure that you've seen, if not our submission, we did submit a written submission, I should say, as well for your reference, as well as, you know, echoing some of the concerns that the new mayor of Edmonton has stated when it comes to condensing some of those central ridings in Edmonton, given the population growth that we're experiencing in the city center. And then when you consider access to acute care and healthcare, even recreational centers, you know, in Greater Edmonton, the relationship that we have between our communities in, you know, Edmonton proper and Greater Edmonton, it's very, I would say, very concerning for us to go from 6 to 5 central ridings in the city of Edmonton. So I want to make that pretty clear. You know, so we've touched on, yeah, a little bit of a, you know, stress on our basic infrastructure to programs and services, acute care, recreational facilities. It is clear that, you know, the burden of representation and governing is different and distinct within Edmonton proper at all levels, including within the Legislative Assembly. And so in particular, when I look at the proposed Edmonton, I believe it's Edmonton Enoch Parkland County riding, I do have concerns about, you know, the ability for that, that new member of the Assembly to effectively represent the interests of Enoch First Nation as well as the urban population, and then going out into Parkland County because of the difference of, you know, the interests of those communities. Of course, they're overlapping, but they are distinct, as we know. And they do have, you know, different relationships with the government and with the Legislative Assembly. You only have to look at Enoch Nation's relationship with Alberta Health and, you know, the new corporations that administer our healthcare system when it comes to addictions care and recovery as well. There's a lot of different relationship there between that nation and the city of Edmonton. And then generally, I will just say, you know, as Edmonton and Calgary's fiscal positions become increasingly strained, in our view, by a number of factors, and our urban populations continue to boom, quite frankly. I think these tensions between communities in, you know, bedroom communities or you know, suburban communities and the larger centers will become more fraught. So that's a major concern for us. Specifically, the reduction of central Edmonton representation from 6 to 5 seats is, I have in my notes here a mistake, but that's I don't want to be aggressive, but I do believe that it is a mistake. I'm just going to say it, you know, quite plainly. I've been a longtime resident of central Edmonton. I've lived, you know, in Edmonton Center, on Jasper Avenue. I've lived on campus, specifically as a university student 20 years ago. I now live in Edmonton Strathcona in the Ritchie neighborhood. And, you know, I can speak to personal experience and say that while I consider myself to be someone who believes in, public health care being available to everyone, regardless of their ability to pay, I believe that, it's very important that the provision of services, especially with the increased strain and social, distress that's happening in our urban communities, that it is becoming much more challenging for members of the Assembly to effectively represent their constituents who, whether they are, homeowners, renters, or even unhoused, those issues are becoming more and more fraught in our communities, while at the same time, our population in urban settings, in those 5 or 6 ridings, 5 being proposed, is booming. The new bylaw renewal, I don't know if anyone's an Edmonton resident here, but you probably got involved in that conversation if you are, has meant that infill housing and zoning changes are happening very, very quickly, including in my home constituent or home neighborhood of Ritchie. And so I think in the past 4 to 5 years, we've seen about a quarter increase in population in those core constituencies from 2021 to 2025, and that's only going to accelerate further with that zoning bylaw and mature neighborhoods turning over and people wanting to live closer to amenities and services. Specifically, I want to speak to Edmonton Strathcona briefly. Proud resident of Edmonton Strathcona. Been in Ritchie neighborhood, which is now being proposed to move over in large part to Edmonton Gold Bar, which is just the constituency west here in Edmonton. I know it's down in the weeds, it's a bit of a micro digression for me, but as a resident, I have to speak to that. And so, if you look at the 99th Street boundary, there just south of White Avenue, which is 82nd Avenue here in Edmonton, what we're currently looking at in the interim report is separating the Ritchie neighborhood from West Ritchie, which is just west of 99th Street towards the University of Alberta campus. And that would remain in the currently proposed Edmonton Strathcona. But the rest of Hazeldean and Ritchie, which is about 7,200 residents, 7,300 residents, higher, 7,500?
9,000.
9,000? Holy smokes, I'm looking at 2021. Okay, we're booming. 9,000 residents would go over to Edmonton Gold Bar. And I believe there's room for play there when I look at the variances. Strathcona is under by about 1.5% in the proposed. And you could maintain Ritchie and Hazeldean in Edmonton Strathcona and still be well within our margins. As the previous presenter said, I have this in my notes as well. It's probably a thankless task that you're doing. You're traveling a lot of miles, so I want to say thank you. And I probably am not the first, but I think it's a good map. I think you follow the principles very, very well, and there's some room for tweaking. So I appreciate the opportunity today, and happy to chat about any questions you might have.
Well, thank you very much, sir. Yes, a Calgary presenter described our task as hugging a cactus, or thankless task. But I don't want to take up too much time because I know there's going to be questions from the rest of the panel. Your public interest group advocates for a 5% variance.
Yes.
Do you do a comparative analysis to reach that? In other words, do you study other jurisdictions?
Yes, we have looked at other jurisdictions.
Okay. So all I want to know is, can we chat after?
Yes.
And maybe I'd like to look at your material.
Absolutely.
So,
yeah.
okay. So questions, and I start with you, Mr.
More just a comment, because we were chatting this morning actually about Edmonton Strathcona, and really, we've heard a lot of feedback on that inner city Edmonton piece. What we're really grappling with is where the growth is in Edmonton, how present tense that is. MLA Hoffman yesterday brought in some photographs of actual, building in progress and infills and more multifamily, and so that I think has bears us to have a good close look, which we absolutely will. Part of the challenge we have right now with Edmonton Strathcona is if we include the neighborhoods you're talking about, we're upwards of like 62,000 or so, and then Gold Bar then becomes underpopulated, and then you need to kind of cascade. And part of Edmonton's glory and challenge is the river and the ravines. It's a fabulous feature, but also presents physical barriers and kind of psychological barriers, right?
Totally.
That's sort of how Edmonton's organized itself, right? And so that's what we're kind of struggling with. And part of the rationale for the previous river view, straddling the river, not straddling, all of that sort of stuff. So I'm sure you can well imagine, the conversations and debates we have behind closed doors of how to kind of sort this all out. And so this was really the accommodation, I guess, was to say, all right, well, we'll keep those neighborhoods together. They just won't be within Strathcona anymore. Now they're in Gold Bar, right? So, and I recognize Mill Creek and the ravine is a big boundary.
Yeah.
We actually originally looked at what that would be, and the numbers were quite high in Strathcona, quite low in Gold Bar, and that, we frankly decided to go the way we've gone. But your feedback is helpful, and we also will take a close look at those development.
I appreciate that.
That you've mentioned. So, no question so
Yeah.
much as just
Appreciate it.
some,
Yeah.
some context. So thank
Dr.
you.
Wonderful, thanks.
Yeah, thank you. I'd follow on that very same line of remark. Ritchie, Hazeldean, and Argyle, 9,000. Surprisingly, most of it in Ritchie. But then you're faced with the dilemma that my colleague just described. You put them into Edmonton to Strathcona and pump its number high by doing so, and simultaneously the Gold Bar number is low. What we've done is sort of try to balance it out. But on that point, you will notice that of the 5 ridings that our interim map provides in the sort of central Edmonton, all 4 of them are below the mean. There hasn't been the growth that one may have anticipated. The growth rate from the earlier configuration to July of 2024 was nowhere near what the growth rate outside the Henday has been.
Right.
So that actually is a macro level consideration. And, people say things are growing, but the data doesn't support that. I mean, and let me add color to that. The anticipated addition of more densified housing stock in the last 2 years, some of it will appear. Area structure plans are fantasies that built by planners. They're not the same thing as bricks and mortar.
True.
So we're very interested in the imminent construction of things, which is why bringing in maps of photographs of current buildings is interesting because that passes my TIVEC test, right? If they're really building it, then I'm really going to take it seriously. The rest of it is aspiration.
Mm-hmm.
So we're always struggling with that problem, and no one's suggesting at all. And our interim report is quite careful to say, it's the rates of growth that need to be compared.
Mm-hmm.
Absolute figures are one thing, but rates of growth are another. So the central core is not growing at a rate that the outer areas are, and they need the attention more immediately. Thank you.
Thank you.
Sure. Ms.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your presentation. I appreciate it. I like that you use the word skepticism with hybrids because we've heard a lot harsher language. And I was pleased to see the hybrid with Enoch into Edmonton. And we had a submission that talked about communities of interest and the trading corridors and things like that. And I take to consideration that the way they manage themselves, the Enoch, will be completely different from what's going on in Edmonton, like running the casino and what that does to some of the Edmonton properties. I like that relationship that was brought up yesterday. But that would happen no matter where the boundary was.
True.
So I am interested in seeing how that plays out because we did use hybrids very sparingly, and not just because it was there, but because maybe it was appropriate. Did you want to add a comment to that thought?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, I will just say initially in response, I agree that, you know, the special relationship that nations have with the provincial government will exist in, you know, positive ways, regardless of where the provincial boundaries are. I fully agree with that. And so there'll be, you know, engagement on things like health centers and, you know, other programs and services directly with the nation, and that's a good thing. You know, I do think in principle, I like the interim report's reflection on, you know, the careful considerations of the impacts that hybrid ridings have on representation. Because while I did notice that the report, you know, reflected on the feedback that, you know, rural-urban divides are not black and white, right? I grew up in Saskatchewan, and if you lived in Saskatoon, you were only a few miles and maybe one generation away from the farm, and that's very similar to here in Alberta. And so, it's a gray area, and at the same time, using hybrid sparingly, I think, is the right approach because of the intergovernmental issues with respect to, you know, asymmetrical, you know, provision of services and the ability to tax and provide those services. And so I appreciate the Commission's careful consideration of hybrid ridings. I just think that with this sort of, you know, you have this domino effect, which I imagine we've talked about a lot, and that's tough. And so it's less specifically about Enoch and more a general skepticism of hybrid ridings that I have. Yeah.
Thank you very much. I appreciate those comments.
Yeah, thank you.
Mr. Evans?
No questions. Thank you.
Mr. LaFortune, please,
Yeah, I'll follow up.
if you are able to stay, great. We can chat during a break. I'm afraid that you and I could nerd out for a long time on the discussion of hybrids and the variants, but I am interested in your organization's research on that area.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. It takes us to Mr. Chris Galloway. No, he's not here. Okay, sorry. Hermina Joldersma. Good morning, ma'am. Just make yourself comfortable. Tell us what electoral division you are in and which ones you wish to comment on.
I will, if you just give me a paragraph.
Sure.
So I thank you for the opportunity to make this presentation. I appreciate your work to ensure that electoral representation in Alberta is optimally fair, and I wish you wisdom as you make your difficult decisions. I have lived in 5 different ridings in Calgary and Edmonton, and that's why I didn't say a riding. Calgary Buffalo, Calgary Currie, Calgary Varsity, Edmonton Highlands Norwood, and Edmonton Strathcona. In between Calgary and Edmonton, I spent 10 years in Yellowknife. One of the jobs I had there was Assistant Returning Officer for the 2019 federal election, second in command for making sure that election happened fairly and properly. I have good tales to tell about it. That job and my time in the North generally gave me great appreciation for the challenge of effective representation in huge geographic areas with sparse populations. I have always been an alert, engaged, and especially curious citizen. Besides getting to know my Calgary and Edmonton neighborhoods and then the North, I have also explored much of this province, from High Level to Drumheller to Medicine Hat and Waterton. I have given talks to quilt guilds in Vermilion and Camrose, ridden the Stettler steam train, gotten stuck in Gumbo at Red Rock Coulee, and with my late husband even took a road trip to Manyberries to see the old CPR station and section house. In other words, I pay attention to and love all of this beautiful province. But my key message today focuses on the ridings I've lived in. Their common characteristic is that they're core or inner city. That means dense populations, walkable neighborhoods, need for public transportation, significant current development, and social challenges. It is important to provide these ridings and their communities effective and fair representation that recognizes and respects their unique character. About population growth in these ridings, Reliable statistics are not easily available for people like me, and I trust that you have better information. But what I was able to find indicates that growth has been steady for several decades now. This accords with my experience. For example, I was on the Parkdale Community Association's Development Committee some 20 years ago. At that time, we were dealing primarily with infill duplexes, so 2 homes on one 50-foot lot. Proposals for condo complexes were few. I visited a couple of months ago. The number of new multifamily buildings was staggering. In Calgary Beltline, where I owned a condo for 10 years, development of large multi-unit buildings continues apace. In Killarney, low-rise seems to be preferred, and there are lots of those. A few examples from my own riding, which is Edmonton Strathcona. I live in a new low-rise condo-style building that was completed in 2023. Our 26 units and 45 residents replaced 4 small post-1950s homes. From my window, I can see another condo building newer than ours with 50 units. There is an 8-plex on the next block, replacing a single-family home. I recently walked by what I took to be an infill duplex still under construction, past the Tyvek stage, and since I am curious, I accosted the youngish man who was just exiting. He was happy to talk. He, his brother, and his cousin had pooled their money to purchase the lot and replaced the single house on it with not 2, but 7 new units. He was just waiting for the final city inspection. I wished him luck. One of the units was townhouse style, he said, and he and his wife planned to move in. He asked about the neighborhood. What is the unique character of these core neighborhoods? I think the people who live there, like myself, are curious folk who love interacting with strangers. We value the spaces and amenities that allow us to do so. We value choice in amenities and unique small businesses. We value interesting streetscapes, fun festivals, meeting people while walking, biking, or taking the bus. I do have a car, but I prefer walking and public transportation because I have more interesting experiences. We value community gardens and open yards. For example, on our property, we chose not to erect fences. As a result, we have great chats with folk walking by, and seniors from neighboring high-rises do daily tours of our gardens in the summer. We often interact with those living more precarious lives, and we value the social services which seek to support those who are less fortunate than we are. What I'm asking is this: please see our inner-city ridings for what they are: vibrant, cohesive communities with significant population growth in their futures. Having lived in Calgary, Buffalo, and having many berries on my brain because of this presentation, I compared numbers. In 1991, Many Berries had 96 residents. Now it has 60. Its electoral district of Tabor-Warner sits at a -10 deviation from the average. I do not begrudge the citizens of Many Berries or Tabor-Warner their representation. Concerns of rural areas are important and need to be addressed. But urban core communities are similarly cohesive. They similarly have interests and concerns. And when I see that Calgary Buffalo, with almost 78,000 people, if I read the map right, deviates at +41, I do raise an eyebrow. There may be good reasons. I just want to plead that residents in core neighborhoods, current and especially future residents, should also have fair and effective representation by MLAs who appreciate and understand them. Thanks again for the work you do and the opportunity to make this presentation.
Thank you very much. Questions? Mr. Evans?
No questions, but thank you for the presentation.
Ms. Sampson?
I loved your presentation. Thank you.
Which neighborhood in Edmonton, Strathcona are you residing in now?
I think it's called Old Strathcona, although we're on just east of Gateway, where it meets Saskatchewan Drive.
Yes, okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Well, that's just about as dense as it gets.
It's
in
very
Edmonton,
dense.
Strathcona, yeah.
And I'm thinking that, I heard what you said about, like the stats not showing that there is that kind of growth. But if I look at, I wonder whether, for example, our building is included in those stats already, whether that new condo with the 50 is included. There's another one coming which amazingly has, I think, 18 units in it. There's that 8-plex, which is brand new. So what I see is a lot of development, and it's very recent. And I don't know whether, your statistics will be better. I hope they're better than anything I was able to find.
Well, our statistics are keyed on July 1st, 2024.
Yeah.
And of course, things have grown. But I could nerd out on census building and how to use them. But we're quite confident that our numbers are solid. And that data set covers every part of the province. That's the other part. So growth can be lumpy and in the country as well as in the city, but these data sets seem pretty good.
Yep.
At any rate, we're not trying to ignore continued growth. We're really quite interested in the rate of growth compared to other places.
Sure.
Yeah, thank you. I really appreciate your your presentation and you coming out here. And I've said it to one of the previous presenters, and I say it quite often to the point, probably getting a little tedious to my colleagues here, but it really matters when we have folks who are from those communities, and especially someone who's lived around the province, provide us some context on the specific conditions on the ground in your neighborhood or your community. That's what this is all about, and we appreciate your thoughtful work in preparing that submission. So my question is, one of the things we're wrestling with is we've heard perspectives from all over the province, and part of the challenge we have is you have some areas that are far north, very remote, and it's quite, you know, there are unique challenges to representing the far north.
For
It's
sure.
a vast geography.
Yep.
But what I've heard you say is that is, you know, I don't think you would deny that. Tell me if you don't let me put words in your mouth. But at the same time, you're saying, you know, in inner city Edmonton or inner city Calgary, there are, you know, some of those wicked problems too, and some of those things are they're different maybe, but they're quite unique to these neighborhoods.
Yeah.
And can you tell me a little bit
Yeah,
more about that?
because there's only 6 minutes, but I was thinking about access to health care in many berries and in my neighborhood. So I live a 25-minute walk from a really good hospital. When I get there, though, I might have to wait for an incredible number of hours. Somebody in many berries who needs to go to a hospital needs to drive quite a long ways. So that too impedes, means that their access to it is delayed. What we share in common is delayed access to health care, for example, and that has, in some ways, different reasons, very different reasons, that need to be looked at in both instances. So I would say people in the north need representation. People in sparse areas need representation because they have unique needs, such as that. For example, that wouldn't be unique to many berries. And then people in core, sort of more the denser populations, also have unique needs that need people who understand and would seek to address those.
Yeah, and you know, at least as you've seen in the interim report, we've tried to balance that out by saying, you know, we will somewhat underweight on a percentage basis, and it's
Yeah.
not just a numbers game by any means, it's effective representation. But at the end of the day, numbers are what we're using. We've said we'll have a slightly smaller constituency in areas outside of the urban areas and a slightly larger constituency, but we've tried to kind of balance that.
I think it's, to me, it looks pretty decent, actually.
That was
yeah.
going to be my question, so
Yeah.
thank you so
Yeah,
much.
and I was thinking about that deviation in Calgary, Buffalo. I'm thinking East Village might be the start of the kicker there. I don't know. Anyways, yeah.
Well, thank you very much, Ms. Joldersma. Anyone who is from Strathcona and mentions and knows many berries impresses
know.
this panel. Thank you so much.
You know many berries? That would be my question. Used to be on the CBC weather report, and they would say, and in many berries it is, and that made me want to go see it. It was a great trip.
Thank you. Our next presenter, and we're actually bang on time, Caden Tanita.
Good morning.
Good morning. Tell us what electoral division you're in and which ones you want to comment on, please.
So I reside in the Ritchie neighborhood in Edmonton, Strathcona.
Okay.
That will be in the Edmonton Gold Bar constituency should this map move forward. But I also work in the office of Edmonton Gold Bar. Emily Marlin Schmidt have for the past couple of years. I do call Sherwood Park my home, though, and I will speak briefly to that at the end of my presentation.
Okay, please proceed.
So as I said, my name is Caden Tanita. I work in the office of Emily Marlin Schmidt, Edmonton Gold Bar. I currently live in Ritchie and hope to move to Sherwood Park again, back home soon in the coming years. Thank you for the opportunity to provide this feedback I do appreciate the Commission's recognition of growth in major centers. However, Edmonton's population growth, both recent and projected, requires more representation than currently proposed. And as constituency staff in Edmonton's urban core, I do see firsthand daily the strain on social services, the increasing number of residents seeking for help. Constituency offices often serve as the first point of contact for folks in distress, connecting them to central resources, helping them navigate a complicated bureaucracy, and often dealing with these folks on some of the worst days of their lives. This demand for services is concentrated in urban core areas where vulnerable populations live and where those frontline services exist. So I'd please ask that you consider that. When I did see the proposed amalgamation for Edmonton Glenora and Edmonton Riverview, I did have some immediate concerns. These are some of Edmonton's most high needs and complex constituencies. And from my experience in Edmonton Gold Bar, I know how overwhelming casework can be, walk-in traffic, and our office already manages a high volume of urgent requests for assistance casework, daily correspondence, and merging Glenora and Riverview would make it increasingly challenging for one MLA and one constituency office to handle that high volume of correspondence and casework. And keep in mind, the MSA, the budget for an elected official, really only allows for one full-time staff, one part-time staff. So that's 1.5 staff members to manage, tens of thousands of constituents and growing. Additionally, as I mentioned, the urban core is where most frontline services are located, where the Albertans who require the most assistance in crisis live, and reducing representation here risks leaving residents underserved. It will push surrounding constituencies to have to absorb those higher volumes of casework, and I strongly urge the Commission to reconsider this amalgamation and instead explore adding more seats in Edmonton to reflect the scale of current and future growth. I do encourage the Commission to consider the impact of infill and densification on Edmonton's urban core. In my neighborhood of Ritchie, I live on the corner of 75th Avenue, 97th Street. On my corner, you can see 5 lots that have been razed to the ground, split into multiple properties, multi-unit dwellings, garage units, and so where there might have been a dozen folks living 2 years ago, in about a year, we'll see upwards of 30 folks living in those same properties. And so that scale of growth and concentration needs to be considered. Like I said, temporarily population might dip, but it'll ultimately go up again after that construction is complete. This is not an isolated trend. It reflects Edmonton's broader push towards infill development, which will significantly increase population density in those established neighborhoods. And these changes underscore a need for adequate representation in Edmonton to match the scale of future growth. I do want to commend the Commission for keeping Edmonton ridings within municipal boundaries, avoiding those rural-urban constituencies combinations. This approach respects those communities of interest, which is so important, as well as local governance structures. And then in closing, I would like to just speak to Sherwood Park. I encourage the Commission to review the municipal boundaries in Strathcona-Sherwood Park when finalizing the maps. We just underwent a municipal election, as well as they reviewed their ward boundaries. And specifically, including Beaumont in the Strathcona-Sherwood Park constituency is concerning. These are very different communities, significantly different geography, obviously, municipal government structure, also cultural identity. Beaumont does have a vibrant Francophone community, which would be a shame to see that split up down the center of the highway there, and that doesn't necessarily make sense to have representation from Strathcona-Sherwood Park representing a Francophone community in Beaumont. And additionally, looking at those municipal maps in Sherwood Park and the area structure plans, the development structure plans for the new communities north of the Yellowhead, Bremner specifically is expecting 80,000 people in the next coming years. And so if you look at those municipal maps, they account for that growth, and I would just ask that the Commission please consider those areas as well as you map out the Strathcona-Sherwood Park and Sherwood Park constituencies. Incorporating this growth in your calculations will help ensure fair population and distribution and effective representation. Thank you so much for the work, for considering my points. Edmonton's urban core and Sherwood Park's future growth deserve thoughtful boundaries that reflect communities of interest and ensure Albertans deserve the representation that they need.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Tanita. Mr. Clark, any questions?
You know, you've raised a point here that I haven't actually heard raised before, but I have some personal experience with in my past life. The nature of the constituency work. And, you know, again, as you've probably heard if you've been listening this morning and throughout the process, we really are grappling with the kind of work and the challenge that it is to be a rural MLA, in particular in the far north. But even just dealing with the vast geographies of rural areas is its own challenge. Lots of different municipal councils, lots of different school boards, just time on the road, windshield time, as we say. But you've raised something I haven't quite heard put that way, at least this round, and that is the complexity of some of the issues you're dealing with and just the sheer volume of it.
Mm-hmm.
Can you just speak to what that looks like on a day-in, day-out basis in that constituency office?
Yeah, for sure. And obviously it's dynamic as current events or actions from the government cause concern. You know, rollbacks to AISH or the addition of the ADAP program resulted in hundreds of calls and visits, walk-ins to our office of folks whose livelihoods depend on those programs who are concerned they're not going to have them anymore. 2 years ago when I first started in the constituency office, it was at the peak height of fear about vulnerable people and, you know, perception of unsafety in communities. And so town halls, walk-ins to my office, folks very concerned about that. But then also vulnerable people, as we've seen since COVID, vulnerable folks' populations have doubled. Those folks coming to our office for basic needs, finding out how to get connected to resources. And then, of course, you know, folks in light of changes to our healthcare system struggling to get hip and knee surgeries. That has increased significantly, as well as, you know, folks trying to get Alberta Works or work permits to stay in the community where they live for a number of years, all have increased precipitously. I know from speaking with my colleagues that has also increased significantly. And as I mentioned, the services for a lot of these folks, the frontline services, folks in most distress, exist in the urban centers. And so I think that answers some of your question.
It does. Can you just remind me, you've used the acronym, so is the AISH replacement, ADAP?
Yeah.
What does that stand for?
So ADAP is the,
ADAP.
AISH is the Assured Income for Severely Handicapped Folks.
Yep.
ADAP, forgive me, I don't know the acronym, but it's a work replacement for folks who should be on AISH.
Right, and it's ADAP.
I don't want to get too political.
Is that
ADAP, yeah.
Okay, I
yeah.
looked that up. Thank you.
Dr. Martin?
Thank you very much. That was very interesting. I just have a couple of comments. As I've offered earlier today, I guess I'll repeat myself. You see, and in this map, we have a screen here too. So if I'm looking at this one,
Sure.
but perhaps you can see this one. You see the 5 proposed ridings. 4 of them are below the population mean, and that's in our adjusted figures. And as you well know, we have included into Gold Bar, because it was desperately low in population, we've included Ritchie, Hazeldean, and Argyle, which is awkward, as we've been told. But the awkwardness cuts both ways, right? If we put them into Edmonton, Strathcona, then that riding would be 62,000, because that's 9,000 people. If we take them from Gold Bar, then, you know, you're way too low. So that's the set of dilemmas that we have. Now, we've heard a lot, and it's certainly the gut feeling that things are growing. No one would deny it, but it's the rate of growth. Because the updated map takes us to Canada Day of 2024. Growth is continuing. The rate of growth in all 5 of these areas is significantly lower than outside the Henday. So that's our first responsibility, I think, if you've got to choose between the two. And the rate of growth in Gold Bar is the lowest of all. And so that's a problem for us, but it is part of the reasoning behind why we've configured these things the way they are. My other remark is with respect to Sherwood Park, the mighty hamlet is not a municipality. It's a hamlet inside a county government.
It's a specialized municipality.
It's a specialized, and this is, the boundaries you see there, particularly on the south and the north, are the urban service area. Sherwood Park is not growing very fast.
It's going to double its urban population in 20 years.
No, that's wrong.
Bremner accounts for 80,000 people, Cambrian and Hartstone as well.
In 50 years. I've asked the city government, county government, and Bremner will take that long to come out to 80,000. The area immediately north of the Yellowhead, Cambrian, is filling out now. There's 500-ish, it's soon to be 1,000 people there. But the Bremner, even though they've scraped the ground, isn't projected to grow at a very rapid rate. So again, that brings us back to a problem we struggle with, which is about how much forward projection can we take on board? And not very much is the answer. That too is a constraint on how much anticipated growth we can take on board in our present deliberations.
May I comment on his comments?
Yeah.
Very briefly, because we're over time already.
Sorry, so briefly we're talking about rate of growth in Edmonton Gold Bar, and I don't invoke Edmonton Gold Bar as the rate into population, but again, keeping in consideration the amount of constituency work that's going to be impacted for all the surrounding communities in Edmonton core areas. But then also Sherwood Park, I would also just remind you to look at the Hearthstone development, which I think in 1 or 2 years has increased by 5,000 people. There are significant number of folks there. The rate of growth there is higher than we were expecting. I just ran a municipal campaign there. It's growing quickly.
Okay, thank
Go
you.
ahead.
Very quick answers, very
absolutely.
quick questions. Ms. Sampson.
Just going to comment, you talk about being stretched in your office financially. Well, I think we're going to recommend a note in our report, because the kinds of stretching are occurring right across the whole province. And if we are, as a commission, if we're not given the electoral divisions enough of them, more than 2, at least we can do is ask for more financial support. So thank you for highlighting that aspect.
Thank you. Mr. Evans?
No, no questions. Thank
So
you for-
just in light of what Mr. Clark said and what Ms. Sampson said,
Sure.
you're a full-time employee for your MLA.
Yes.
How many hours? So that's 40 hours a week or
Yeah.
the equivalent. Okay. And you're the only one.
I'm the only full-time staff, yes.
So there is another staff person.
There's a part-time staff. She works 3 days a week, yeah.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Excuse you, please remain if you can to hear other presenters. Our next presenter is Lisa Vanderquack. Make yourself comfortable. Tell us what electoral division you are living in and which ones you wish to comment on.
Thank you. My name is Lisa Vanderquack. I'm the mayor of Beaumont. So I'm in the Leduc Beaumont riding currently, and as you know, there is a proposal to...
And want to stay there.
Absolutely. The gentleman before me kind of set up my presentation beautifully, so if I may continue, thank you, Chair Miller and members of the Commission for giving me the opportunity to speak to you today. I recognize the complexity of your work and the responsibility you carry in balancing population parity with the constitutional principle of effective representation. I am here today on behalf of Beaumont residents and Beaumont City Council to respectfully ask that the Commission reconsider the interim proposal to divide our city and instead keep Beaumont whole within a single provincial constituency. For these reasons, Beaumont is a small 25,000 person city that's cohesive, and we deserve to have representation as a whole. With a population of 25,000 and growing, we are less than half the provincial average for proposed riding. Given that scale, dividing Beaumont into 2 constituencies, I believe is unnecessary. More importantly, the 50th Street, while 50th Street is a visible roadway, it is not a meaningful political boundary for our residents. Electors understand their representation through municipal boundaries, not through internal roadways. And residents share schools, recreation, all kinds of facilities across that 50th Street boundary. Now, the second reason, so that I believe would weaken the voter clarity about that kind of an invisible line down the 50th Street. The second reason is because of effective representation. I believe it will weaken our representation at the legislature as well as our municipal governance. Effective representation depends on clarity, coherence, accountability, and under this proposed split, as you know, Beaumont would have 2 MLAs for the same citywide priorities: transportation, education, all the things that we would advocate the province for. This creates duplicated advocacy for a small city, inconsistent messaging, and I believe diluted accountability. From a governance perspective, citywide issues function best when we have one clear provincial advocate. A split would complicate intergovernmental coordination from a municipal level, increase administrative effort, and weaken Beaumont's ability to advance shared priorities. So rather than strengthening our representation, I believe it will divide the city and would actually weaken our representation. Now, the final point I want to make is probably the most important and strongest. The previous gentleman alluded to it, and that is in determining electoral boundaries, the Commission is asked to consider community of interest, minority representation, and municipal integrity, as well as growth patterns. Beaumont aligns strongly with each of these principles. Beaumont forms an integrated and functional regional community with Leduc County, parts of Leduc County and Leduc City. Our residents already share commuting patterns, economic ties, school divisions, recreation programs, regional services. These are precisely the kind of connections that the Commission, I believe, relies on when identifying coherent communities. By contrast, Beaumont does not have the same functional ties with Strathcona County or Sherwood Park. The residents do not orient their lives in that direction. So by including part of Beaumont in Sherwood Park, Strathcona, it would place our residents in a constituency that does not reflect how we live and function. Now, the last point here is Beaumont also has a distinct cultural and linguistic identity. As one of 4 officially bilingual municipalities of Alberta, more importantly, the only city that is bilingual in all of Alberta. The other 3 are either a town or a hamlet. This uniqueness matters, I believe. It represents a citywide, recognized minority language community that deserves clear, unified representation. The principle of effective representation under the Charter expressly allows for consideration of minority representation and community identity, which supports keeping a culturally distinct bilingual city like Beaumont, especially because it's small, intact within a single constituency. Yes, Beaumont is a fast-growing community. In fact, it's the fastest growing in the Edmonton area and remains well below the provincial average population. But I believe any population imbalance will naturally correct over time, while if you divide a cohesive, culturally distinct city, this would create a lasting representation issue. Let me just put it into a practical terms. Splitting Beaumont into 2 constituencies would be assigning 2 principals to the same school. The students, teachers, and programs are exactly the same, but leadership, advocacy, and accountability are divided. It doesn't improve outcomes, it actually creates confusion. So in closing, I want to reiterate that Beaumont is a small, unified, bilingual city with shared services, strong regional ties, and a clear community identity. Keeping Beaumont whole respects the Commission's own criteria, strengthens effective representation, and ensures our unique city continues to be clearly represented and fairly at the provincial level. So on behalf of the City of Beaumont, the Beaumont City Council, and the residents of Beaumont, I respectfully ask the Commission to keep Beaumont whole within a single provincial constituency, preferably with parts of Leduc County and Leduc. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mayor Van der Kwak. Most appreciated presentation. We cannot make promises at this stage, although we recognize we have made mistakes in the interim report. So let me leave it at that. However, you do appreciate that if we restore it, you may vary, your electoral division and your MLA may be faced with a higher than average population in the riding. right? I mean, there's trade-offs.
Yes, there's variance for
Yeah,
sure within that, yes.
And you'd rather have that.
Yes, I believe for the reasons that I expressed in terms of a community of interest, just natural regional partnerships, and the way our residents already live and function,
Okay,
along with, of course, our cultural identity, I think is very, very important.
thank you, thank you. Okay, Mr. Evans, any questions or comments?
Yeah,
Mrs. Evans?
can you tell me about the school districts? So which school districts apply to Beaumont?
Black Gold School District.
Oh.
We have, within the city of Beaumont, we have both private school, Catholic school system, as well as French immersion. In fact, one of the reasons why a lot of people move to Beaumont is because we have French immersion from kindergarten to grade 12.
So is Black Gold School District just in Beaumont?
No, that goes into Leduc County, I believe all the way over to Kalmar, Leduc County, and all the ways over, yeah.
And did I understand you to say that there's the connectivity between Beaumont and Leduc, not Leduc County, but Leduc? Would you say that's greater than the connectivity between the residents of Beaumont and going into the city of Edmonton for services?
I would say the connectivity to Leduc because of the airport and because of the services over there. We often share emergency services as well as recreation. For example, when our pool shuts down for repairs, we send our people over to Leduc City. They do the same for us. So we have a lot of shared collaboration that's already happening.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Ms. Sampson?
Thank you, and I'm so glad you showed up in person here because Beaumont has been a real hot spot. And I want to just repeat what I heard, and that is you would be prepared to have Beaumont join in with the city of Leduc and sit at a population of approximately 64,000, with Beaumont being 25,000 and Leduc at 39,000, which is high over the target population, but you're prepared to do that with knowing that you're going to experience growth, and you would prefer that over joining Edmonton?
For the reasons that I mentioned as well, thank you for that question. It is purely from the already existing community ties that we have, the recreation facilities that we share, the collaborations that are already happening. It better reflects how our community already lives and functions. And so yes, I believe this is the best case scenario to continue to help Beaumont thrive as a city.
Perfect. Thank you very much for your time today.
You're welcome.
By the way, are you a new mayor, or were you mayor before?
No, I am a brand new mayor.
Okay, thank you. Dr. Martin?
Thank you very much, Mayor.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
I wanted to continue this theme. I wanted to ask you about commuter patterns. Now, you suggested, and it's traditionally been true, I think, a lot of people going to Nisku for sure. But what about the commuters going north? Let's take it for granted they're not going east, right? So what about the commuter patterns of people living by preference in Beaumont, but working in Edmonton? Is that a significant commuter pattern?
Obviously, you have people who do work in Beaumont work in Edmonton as well. That's going to happen just naturally because we are close to the Edmonton border as well. But historically, and what we see continuing is that the patterns of migration and transportation and all those pathways more go towards the west.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Clark?
Thank you very much. Yeah, that was something I was wondering as well.
Ms. Clark.
Interestingly, I was just looking up a presentation we had from we did two options in south of Calgary, blending Okotoks with a piece of Calgary, and then not doing that. And one of the presenters said, just because there's a lot of commuters from Okotoks to Calgary actually indicates that they're very different places, because people choose to live in Okotoks very deliberately. Would you say that's also the case in Beaumont, even if there's people who commute to Edmonton?
I agree 100%. People move here for a different reason.
And for just total clarity, if we were to say, well, actually what we think we'll do to address this challenge is loop Beaumont into Edmonton as a part of Edmonton as a hybrid constituency, Beaumont southeast Edmonton. Would you be in favor or opposed to that?
I would not favor that, just for, again, for the reasons that I expressed. We already have very strong ties with the community of Leduc County, parts of Leduc County and Leduc City that really help just us to move forward together, and also representation at the legislature.
And then last question on that point. What's really interesting is we get both sides of it. So sometimes we've moved a constituency such that somewhere used to have 2 MLAs or even 3, and they say, wait a minute, you've reduced our representation. We have fewer MLAs to advocate for us. We used to do a strength in numbers thing,
Yes.
and now we only have 1. And then we also have, and I'd say it's running about 50-50, who will say, whoa, we have 1 MLA, we want to build a strong relationship with that 1 member of the assembly. They understand us, and they will strongly advocate, and we won't be diluted. So I'm just curious, obviously, I think the latter would be your argument. You've made that very strongly. But had you thought about, wait a minute, maybe there's some value in having more than 1 MLA?
There is, but not at the expense of splitting our city in half. But I take into account, and I know when you're making these decisions in terms of population parity, you don't really necessarily look at how many voters are there. So if you look at Beaumont currently, 25% of our population is under the age of 14, which means
Young.
there's a large demographic that do not vote, and currently it's a very family-oriented community, and it's only going to continue to be that way just because of the uniqueness of Beaumont. So when looking at it from that perspective, I believe that the best-case scenario is to keep it with Leduc County or Leduc City and/or.
That's incredibly helpful. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Thank you for the time.
Thank you.
Okay,
This is Clark.
our next presenter is Tara
This is Chair.
Sawyer. And you've heard my routine, so welcome, and tell us about your electoral division.
Good morning. I'm with the Old Didsbury Three Hills electoral area. So firstly, thank you for allowing me to speak today. I did want to acknowledge the significant amount of work that goes into the process. Balancing the geography and the population, the services and community connections is complex, and I did appreciate the thoughtful approach reflected in your interim report. But as I mentioned in my written submission, I do have concerns about adding the Sundre Foothills area into the constituency. The Old Didsbury Three Hills region primarily is agriculture-based, and daily life reflects that. People are focused on the issues that affect their ability to farm, ranch, move goods, and support food production. That shapes everything about how people travel to the businesses they rely on and to the services that matter most. The Sundre area, by contrast, is shaped much more by forestry, outdoor recreation, and its foothills geography. Those communities often focus on different practical issues, things like wildlife management, land use access, forestry operations, and tourism-related activity. Neither set of concerns is better or worse. They are simply rooted in different landscapes and industries. When 2 regions have such different day-to-day realities, it can make it challenging to represent both effectively, especially across a very large geographic area. Rural representation relies heavily on being physically present, understanding local priorities, and staying connected to long-standing community relationships. Expanding the riding westward changes those dynamics in ways that are important to consider. There are several areas where the proposed boundaries reflect how people in my region live and do connect. Keeping Trochu, Huxley, Three Hills together is one of your decisions that I do encourage. These communities share school systems, health services, recreation, cultural programs, and many daily travel patterns. Highway 21 ties them together naturally. I appreciate that Carbon remains aligned with Nehill County. Carbon's tri-campus school partnership with Acme and Linden is important to families. They share many recreational educational resources. Keeping those communities together maintains stability for students for the wider region. The region has a long history of consistent boundaries, which is an important consideration. Communities such as Trochu, Three Hills, Acme, Bicycle, and Irricana have been represented together for decades, some since the 1940s. That continuity matters. It builds a sense of strong identity for residents and supports long-standing relationships between MLAs, municipalities, service organizations, and community groups. In rural areas, those relationships are especially vital. When boundaries shift suddenly, it can disrupt those connections and affect how local needs are understood and communicated. More broadly, rural communities function differently because of their geography, the distance, and the daily life. In agriculture-based areas like mine, people regularly travel for equipment, vet services, auctions, inputs, and seasonal work, often along predictable corridors that connect specific towns and hubs. These realities differ from regions shaped by forestry or tourism, where priorities naturally include wildlife interactions, crown land access, and seasonal recreation. Recognizing those differences helps ensure boundaries reflect cohesive communities of interest and practical service patterns. I also want to note on a broader context about representation in central Alberta. Rural and urban regions often prioritize different day-to-day matters. In agriculture-based areas, residents watch closely for policies that affect their ability to grow food, access inputs, move goods, and manage land and water. In more urban settings, the emphasis can look different, more on dense transportation networks, housing, and urban service delivery. Both perspectives are important, and people expect to see their lived realities reflected in how constituencies are organized. In this part of the province, residents consistently express that they want to feel that their rural experience is understood and visible. When constituencies cover very large geographies, or when the number of rural seats is reduced in a region, it can affect how present their MLA can be and how their specific priorities are heard. That context is front of mind for many families, producers, and small-town organizations in central Alberta. I am concerned about what appears to be a reduction in rural seats in the overall revisions and ask that this be revisited with careful consideration of submissions from the affected regions, including ours. Irricana and Bicycur have strong practical ties with Acme and nearby towns. Students from those areas use the Acme pool for school swim lessons, family rely on Bicycur's hockey arena, and many volunteer organizations draw members from all three of those communities. People commute regularly between them for work, school, and services. These connections form a natural social and economic corridor that has existed for many years. Transportation routes play a key role in rural daily life. Highway 2 is a major link for Olds, Didsbury, and Carstairs, and aligning communities along this corridor reflects how people actually move for work, school, business, and recreation. So in summary, what I wanted to say was that there is a long-standing tie between Kneehill County, Mountain View County, and the town of Olds. Trochu, Huxley, Three Hills, that Irricana, Bicycur, and Acme all maintain strong practical connections with their communities. Pardon me. Sorry. Rural regions require attention to geography, service demands, and established community patterns.
We're getting you some water.
I'm going to have to grab my water. I tried to drink some before I came up. I'm sorry.
Everybody's getting you water.
I thought I could hold it back. Rural regions require attention to geography, service demands, and established community patterns. As noted in my written submission, Cremona's geography does align more naturally with the foothills region. Thank you again for your time. I hope the local context I've shared today is helpful as you consider the boundaries.
Certainly take your time. Aaron, can you bring the screen, this particular riding up Mountain View,
Pardon me.
in a large format?
The other thing I wanted to mention is I encourage maintaining rural population thresholds 10 to 15% below the provincial average to account for the unique demands on rural MLAs. So thank you for your time.
Thank you. I just had the
Oh, that won't, thank you for trying.
map brought up. Any questions, Mr. Evans? Of this presenter?
I was just doing the exact same thing, trying to see what the proposed was as compared to the existing. And so your you're suggesting that anything west of Cremona should not be in, that's where we should draw the boundary.
Yeah, like putting that western line sort of back where it was, off the top of my head, I'm already forgetting, just outside of Olds, well, it is, I can't see it from here.
Isn't it Highway 20?
I think it's Highway 20, that over, putting that
22.
22.
22, sorry.
on the other side.
Yeah,
Is the-
22,
is-
Cremona's on.
Was the old.
Yeah.
And we heard submissions from Crossfield, and Crossfield was quite happy with where we had put them.
Yeah, I'm
in-
aware.
in their- You agree with that?
Well, as the MLA of the area, I think I forgot to mention that part. I am the MLA for MLA Old Didsbury Three Hills. I have a good relationship with them, so I do know that, in speaking with the mayor, she likes the idea. I, of course, would love to keep them just because I do know they still do some work within that corridor, but it's one of those things when we talk about the numbers, I know when you're looking for our area. So trying to keep us within a certain amount of population, it's harder on the rural side. So of course, for me, maintaining Crossville and knowing how they interact a bit with the Carstairs, but I do understand that she's not opposed to that change. And I actually am not opposed if it went that way either. However, I look just in terms of that corridor, I know with the interactions I'm already doing with all of the different counties, villages, and knowing all the groups that work together and that, it's concerning to me, whereas Sundre and over, it really is a different kettle of fish that does not really fit into what primarily is my area.
We kind of moved things east and west, and what we've heard from almost everyone in regards to this area and in central Alberta is it's more north and south. There are a couple of areas where there is an east-west corridor, but otherwise it's a north-south. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I would. Yeah,
Thank you.
yeah. So.
Thank you. Mrs. Sampson?
Thank you for coming out today. I have 2 points I'd like your opinion on.
Sure.
That Trochu Three Hills on Highway 21 is of great interest to all the people on that route, including Elnora Delburn. And they have expressed some interest in communities of interest and joining it into the Innisfil Sylvan Lake. I'd like your comment on that.
Yeah.
And then I have one other area I would like you to comment on.
Yeah, I would disagree. I would very much keeping, that's why when I mentioned Trochu, Huxley, Winborn, that whole area, Trochu Three Hills, they're all very closely tied to each other, but they're also, those school systems are also tied closely
Right.
moving into, I mean, when you talk about the sports teams and the community groups, the 4-H clubs, that all belongs into Nehill County. So suddenly moving those ones into there doesn't make sense. Like families, the school, the agriculture, Trochu Three Hills it makes more sense to keep it here. I find that there is still a lot more connection that happens on my end than on the Sylvan side.
And my other area that I would like your comment on, and I know that it's a change for the riding, is for Sundre to come in. And I want to just say that in a province as vast as we have, we often have electoral districts that have different points or different ways of economy and geography. But I suspect, like, Sundre is not that far off the main Highway 2 corridor, and probably, would you not suspect that they're going that way for their services, schools, medical, all that? Is there not a community of interest at all with Sundre?
Even in speaking with the old mayor and everyone, it isn't, it really is quite different. There is some that comes through, but in terms of, like, as I mentioned before, in terms of their needs and what they focus, it is very different. You would think because it's close tolls, but there is a very real difference. And I will say, just in terms of size and I mean, presently, having a rural riding, obviously, it's quite large. I'm going all
Right.
over. So, which
Yeah.
is why when you moved some of the lines, it made sense. But going far that direction, to me, isn't necessary. And I do think it really waters down the representation on what matters to them and how they connect with what matters within my area. And that to me is still something that needs to be considered. And the corridor is just different. Like that number 2, all the towns that I have, I mean, that is their common connector for businesses. I mean, I'm not seeing people go into Sundre because of what it is. Do
It's more
you know what I
this way.
mean?
Yeah, one way.
But they're not coming into there for school and things, right?
Thank you very much, I appreciate
Yeah,
that.
if that
So
helps.
would you say that the magnetic field of the mountains sucks Sundre, but the field loses its power east of Sundre? Is that what you're saying?
I get to enjoy it from afar, from my farm.
Okay.
I mean, yeah, to jest about it, but the reality is that it is a really different. They are different. It is, and to me that is something when it comes to the community and knowing the groups
But-
and how they interact.
But you appreciate that then that puts us into a numbers problem.
Well, and that's what I did want to stress, because it also seemed like our numbers were sort of being played with to put us more up, and that's why I was saying we really need to remember keeping that 15% less threshold for rural MLAs, because I can tell you, to get to places to give proper representation when you have a large,
Yes.
where I reside within my constituency, it's a little over an hour for each to hit each corner, and with a lot of those towns trying to get to be there and make sure they feel seen and to address them can be tricky.
Okay, Dr. Martin?
Thank you, and thank you very much for your
Thank you.
presentation. And I too want to talk about Highway 21 and some issues associated with that. We heard a lot about Trochu. And I was very intrigued by your remarks about the long history of quite stable boundaries for this riding. And you, in doing so, mentioned Arikana and Bicycle, which are currently not in your riding.
They are in my
You're-
riding currently, yes.
You're making an assertion about a community of interest. One can see an economic interest because it's on the railway, but you're saying that that interest exists in other spheres as well?
Well, Bicycle and Arikana are in my constituency at present. In your proposal, you're taking them away, and I'm
Right.
saying I would very.
You want them back?
Give them back. I mean, I can understand, and I will say, and it is still, that is the connection. I mean, I mentioned it in terms of on the recreation side, which sounds like, but the close ties like Acme and Bicycle School have together, coming to use our pool for their swim lessons. All of our kids, that's the hockey arena. If you're going to play hockey, unless you're going to, like Bicycle, they all become Blazers, right? So, yeah, they're still in there. And I understand it, moving it into Airdrie, given proximity, especially potentially Arikana, I can see wanting to do that. But that divider right there, and if you think of even the banks, like the community of Bicycle is still, and it's agriculture businesses that all the farmers in our area, like that is very closely tied.
So that whole, to final sum, that whole area is classic rural. This is grain farmer world.
Yes, grain and cattle,
Okay,
grain
thank
and
you.
cattle.
Okay.
So,
Mr. Clark?
yeah, ag society is very strong.
So thank you very much. I've got a few questions, and first off, I just want to thank you so much for coming, because it's just so important for us to hear from folks who actually represent their communities and have a clear understanding of what the literal lay of the land is. So thank you very much for being here. Ms. Sampson already asked about Trochu, so I won't ask about that again. What I'm interested in is the current boundary in 2017 stretches a long way east and south. south actually all the way of Strathmore to the Siksika Reserve, includes Hussar. And so it's, in essence, what we've done is sort of cut that part off and sort of gone the other way. And so I imagine, my friend Google Maps tells me it's an hour 50 drive from Hussar to Olds, which is a long way. But for you to get in this new configuration, Olds to Caroline is only a little less than an hour, 50 minutes. You save an hour driving. And I'm kind of wondering about the part west of 22 there. That feels like that's the mountains, right? That whole big part up over there based on Highway 22, Highway 53, I think that is under Caroline. So the Clearwater River there. I guess I'm just curious if you feel like losing the south and east portion in this new configuration makes a bit of sense relative to, like, how does that kind of land with you now in your current constituency configuration? It won't show in here because it's sort of south and east of that, but it does stretch quite a long way south. I'm just kind of curious about that.
Well, you're referring to down,
Yeah, the current 2017 boundary goes all the way, you can't really see it on the map.
well, you're referring to like going down, like Rosebud Standard.
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
Which is why you'll note in my submission, I never commented on keeping, I mean, I understood moving those the way you wanted to.
That makes sense.
Yeah,
Okay.
which is why I didn't argue that point. I understood why you would do that piece.
Okay.
But, and I guess the way I looked at it, even, maintaining that original boundary and therefore leaving Sundre where it was, we would both be okay in our numbers just because on the percentage being rural, like, I guess what I'm saying is we shouldn't be being topped back up to those numbers and keeping it lower. And we are seeing growth. No, we're not going to see it the same way. Obviously not. But that's why as rural, keeping that lower percentage, I think.
So your presentation is a two-pronged approach. Cut off the west and use the average in a more towards the 15%.
Well, yeah, like as it states that you normally would. So I noticed that you weren't really following that. I don't mean that as a criticism. It had gone up, and I was just saying, well, you adjust here and here, and then we're basically in my mind, in that sweet spot of that, 15% difference as a rural riding. It does make a difference to an MLA representing those areas, and again, I can't stress enough for people in rural ridings really want to feel represented, and when things start to get too large, they already feel there's fewer of us than an urban setting, and so not wanting to see it get bigger and lose that voice.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you very
Thanks so
much.
much for being here.
Thanks.
Yes, thank you, Ms. Sawyer.
Apologies for that cough.
Just to give some perspective, we have 10 minutes for each presenter, in theory. 6 minutes of presentation, 4 minutes for questions. You can see I, as a chair, have failed miserably in enforcing that. So on average, it looks like we are using 20 minutes per presenter. So we've rushed through our break, or we've missed our break. And so in that context, I'm calling the next presenter David Dorwood. And don't expect more than 20 minutes, I guess. That's what I'm saying. Mr. Dorwood, have a seat. Tell us where you're from and which ones you want to comment on.
Firstly, maybe a minute or two cough time, and that's a blessing that you would allow this MLA some time for that. And take your break. I mean, I don't know how many.
No, we're soldiering through.
I'm David Dorward. I was an MLA 10 years ago in Edmonton Gold Bar. I'm not going to be very micro. I'm going to be more macro today. I hope your final report will speak to future legislatures. Please take the time to let them know what you have learned through this process. I believe you have severe handcuffs on you through the Electoral Boundaries Commission Act. I see places in your interim report where you're somewhat boxed in. I'm happy to see in your report many times that you consider the needs of people over the needs of the Assembly or the government or something else. And I thank you for your service on the Commission. But I don't think you do that necessarily enough when I see the words like, quote, having either lost population or growth at a rate that is less than the province as a whole, end quote. And I say, so what? Arguably, these areas need more attention, perhaps, not necessarily less. Section 15.1 and 15.2 are prime examples. Why 4? I won't elaborate on those sections for those watching, I'm sure you're aware. That's an overly prescriptive number, perhaps, of what your good work could determine. Why does that section not allow a number of constituencies to break the rule on the high end? Why is it just the low end? I'll bet a lot of folks in this room think that we have two large segments of Alberta, rural and urban. I submit with respect to representation, we actually have three. As an MLA who literally was 3 minutes from my constituency of Gold Bar when I was at the Assembly, where I could be visiting with constituents right after a session of the legislature or door knocking, my constituents were favored over those, for example, in Calgary or Red Deer or other places who had to wait for a Friday or Saturday to see their MLA in person. Of course, both being completely different than a geographic expansive rural area. Do you see how equality fails and fairness must form a big part of all you do? I know there will be other presenters who will comment on the incredible difference that it was for me and other urban MLAs to share responsibilities with 19 others in Edmonton, 20 MLAs presently. An MLA in Edmonton shares with 19 others because we as a group support a comparative handful of school boards and one municipality. Rural MLAs work with groups is incredibly different than urban, and I'm not sure that the representation reflects that enough. In other words, a rural MLA by his or herself must look at maybe 6 different community areas, municipalities, way more school boards, etc. Overall, please consider and pass on through your report the difference between equality and fairness. Fairness must trump equality, and people, individual Albertans, must trump rules. You use the word Indian Reserve in your report, which is acceptable. However, consider speaking to First Nations and see if they are okay with that. The option is Indigenous reserves. Why would the Assembly diminish the work of yourselves to the extent that they sat in a room and decided 89 was the right number this time around? If they knew that, why have a commission? Please recommend that that not necessarily be done in the future. Perhaps a close range of seats would have been better, with a view to letting the commission decide what would be the most appropriate. What I see is you pitting one constituency against another, indeed even the rural-urban divide, to see who wins in the keep it to 89 seat rule. In this regard, I would draw your attention to page 38 of the report. The second last paragraph is a real head scratcher. This is not your fault. You wrote it as it is. I just think that you really don't have the flexibility you need here, and that paragraph really states that quite well. Throughout your work, I hope that you see things from a person's perspective, not the perspective of the Act or the MLAs or something else. Consider the person who needs help with health care or a business owner who needs help with a regulation. Is it easy for them to contact their MLA? Is it as easy as it was for folks in my area to contact me? No, it never will be. We can't correct that. But let's not make it worse for them. Even if population goes down or doesn't meet the average, they didn't do that. People still there. Their needs don't change. So what is running the ship here? Page 37, second paragraph. When you said in the interim report, Commission's dilemma, that's a hint that you indeed have some handcuffs causing you to have a dilemma. Back to the Act, Section 15, Sub 3. It's an interesting little part of the Act. It says, Crow's Nest Pass isn't a town. Good grief, just to support Section 15.2, how silly. I think that the Albertans in that municipality likely believe that they're as important as any other location of 6,000 good folks. Let's talk about situations where you have recommended that the urban-rural divide hybrid, I think I might have heard from Mr. Clark, be broken down. where you have a constituency that's both rural and urban, I say yes, yes, yes. I think you need to discuss and talk about the individuals there. For me, the people that live close to Edmonton or any other urban center, they're my folks. I mean, they'll interact, they'll shop often at the same stores, and they'll come across the same boundaries, and they're affected by the same rules, and it's being Albertans. So I think that's what we need to focus on, rather than this divide between people. Let's bring people together and have homogeneous scenarios. Many of the points I've made are well said in your report on pages 7 and 8, where Justice McLaughlin discussed the right to vote. I hope that in the week before the sign-off of the report, which is a date which is coming fairly quickly here, that you review those words. And they include the following statement. It emerges, therefore, that deviations from absolute voter parity may be justified on the grounds of practical impossibility or the provision of more effective representation. Thanks very much.
Thank you, sir.
Mrs. Chair.
Mr. Clark, any questions?
Thank you, and thank you very much for being here and for your past service to the province. Good to see you.
Yeah.
Really interesting. You were the Edmonton Gold Bar, is that right?
Correct, yeah.
So you referenced that earlier. And interestingly enough, we had the constate assistant for Gold Bar, current MLA,
Yep.
here this morning, and he was talking about the challenges that are faced in representing complex populations and the workload that it takes to manage AISH, healthcare, social service, Alberta Works, education, those sorts of things that, addiction, housing, homelessness,
Yep.
the sort of, urban issues that tend to kind of come to the front door of a constate office. Can you speak a bit to that work that you had to do as a constituency level MLA?
There certainly is a tremendous amount of that, but I do want to emphasize, with regard to my comments, that there are 20 coming together to support individuals and groups in the community that assist and support and help those individuals. So while you're the MLA speaking to that particular constituent, you have this body of reference. If you're a smart, wise MLA, you will know what the doors to get opened for that individual are. So you didn't ask it in this way, but if you were to compare with rural, and if the population is similar in a rural setting, you have maybe different but very similar situations in many communities in rural Alberta as well. I think they are more dramatic in the inner constituencies, no doubt. But you have a lot more in an urban setting to be able to handle that, the weight of that, and supporting and building and finding ways to help the groups that do look after those individuals.
I agree completely that the geography in rural Alberta is a big challenge. We just heard from the previous presenter in central Alberta. It's especially acute in the far north. That's undeniable. And the vast geographies are really a challenge. Previous commissions have recommended there be a differential funding for constituency offices. It's not a replacement for the MLA. It never will be, but especially with technology emerging and Zoom calls and a little bit better cell coverage, again, different between different parts of the province. When you were in the legislature, was that ever contemplated in having even a somewhat substantially greater budget for those rural and remote MLAs?
Yes, it was, absolutely. It wasn't, I wouldn't call it an issue, but you happen to be talking to the person that probably cared about it the most, because I'm an accountant. I was a CMA cost accountant before I was a CPA, so it very close to me. And the model of that, in my opinion, and still probably is, I haven't thought about that issue for a long time, but it's a broken scenario. And I would support the rural more in that regard than I would me in an urban setting. I always thought that the rural scenario did not properly look after the individual person that happened for whatever reason to be a rural Albertan. And because you look at staffing, I mean the cost of having one person at an office in an urban setting versus having disparate offices in rural settings is quite a big difference.
You and I are 100% aligned on that, and I think in the grand scheme of things, it is tremendous value and frankly not that much money. And, for the value it provides back to Albertans. you and I are aligned on that 100%. So anyway, thank you so much for being here.
Dr. Martin?
Thank you very much, and thank you for being here, Mr. Dorward. I too think that we need to make a set of recommendations about legislation and with respect to member services about a significant review of not only the budget but the rationales for the work that that committee does. But I wanted to press you further on your characterization of Alberta as urban and rural, and I would suggest suburban as well, which leads into the discussion of hybrids, I think. We struggle with what might constitute a reasonable hybrid, if I can put it that way, because we have, at this very moment, there are at least 18 hybrid situations in the ridings of Alberta. We've recommended a few more, but the much of the discussion seems to presume a dichotomy, urban and rural, and I think that's false. I think there's a whole spectrum of forms of life and different communities in between the core condo in a skyscraper and a guy baling hay. And there's a huge spectrum, and Alberta is increasingly about that piece in the middle, as well as the growth in the urban centers. Now, you've said that fairness must trump population equality. Translating it into our technical terms, such as they are, that's where our discussion has to go, and that's about how we deal with hybridizing here and there. So can you speak more to your notion that hybrids, you said yes, yes, yes. So let's put a bit more flesh on it, please.
Yes, for sure. Thank you for the opportunity. Having the advantage of 74 years under my belt, I think that I am in an advantage situation in that mom and dad both grew up in rural places in Alberta, and so we, as urban kids with an engineer and a nurse parents, exited the urban setting about 4 o'clock every Friday and came back Sunday night because we went either, to Viking or Morinville. And so we lived a lot of rural. And back in those days in the late 50s and 60s and 70s, Alberta was much more segmented as far as that was. Rural folks were kind of rural, and they might have traveled into Morinville, or they may have made the long, long trek into Edmonton. That doesn't exist in our culture anymore. People are way more able to and make decisions to get them out of the urban settings. In fact, even I think there's been a change, I'm not a sociologist, but I think there's been a change of that in the last 10 years, whereby people are exiting cities and making decisions to be able to get somewhere. They can work from that place on their same jobs and travel once a week. Therefore, this whole thing about what really bothers me, unfortunately, is that the discussion often breaks down to, you're going to get more votes in the urban regarding this party, or you're going to get more in rural regarding that party, which absolutely should be not a part of the conversation whatsoever with respect to any of this conversation. It's about the individual people that live there. And so I think that if you were to say 1965, you got red for this and blue for that, or orange for this and purple for that, you would see, that's urban kind of context where I grew up. And there's the rural folks. And I think if you now did that picture, you would see those colors coming right together in a lot of ways, and coming really close together when you get within, say, a 20-minute or a 30-minute drive to people. Let me state it another way. People would, some people inside the city have to drive 30 minutes to get to work. There are lots of people who say, I'll drive 30 minutes rural to get to work. And that puts them out 40 miles. So as you get closer to the urban center, then you've got a real blending of the Albertan. You get a little further away, sure, there are the rural areas. I don't want to discount the fact that they have their own areas that need to get looked after, and I'm getting really close to my 20 minutes.
Thank you.
Yeah. Very quickly, Mr. Sampson.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for your presentation, and your history too, to bring to the table. I like your comments on EDs. I think that's where we really struggled, is only getting 2 and trying to make sense out of the growth with only 2 extra. If we had more, we wouldn't be here. Well, we would, but we wouldn't be arguing.
Yeah.
Okay,
Thank you.
You're right.
Mr. Evans.
Welcome.
Yeah, briefly, I wasn't going to ask a question to, accommodate time, but this has come up, and I do want to pick your brain on this. Would you agree, having been an MLA, that even in Edmonton Gold Bar, you would have had various communities of interest, people with different interests, and groups with different interests that you would have to accommodate and represent?
No.
It was,
I can interpret
it was homogeneous?
homogeneous, but that's how I always pronounce it, the same thing. I guess Gold Bar's very much like that. We don't have any strong ethnicity within Gold Bar. We don't have a slice of the downtown, which brings a whole, socioeconomic issue relative to that. So when I said no, I really meant not that other people wouldn't share with the 20 that are there to share that. I mean, if you want my honest opinion,
The 20 what?
the 20 constituencies.
Oh, I see.
You've got 20 MLAs, and literally 8 can show up at a board meeting for whatever. Like if we had 16, I'm going to overemphasize here, but I will do it. If we had 16 MLAs in Edmonton versus 20, I can honestly say that I'm not sure that any one person at any one time would be disadvantaged.
There's that much overlap.
Absolutely. There's a ton of overlap.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Can I just encapsulate, and I want to do that and clarify. First of all, hybrids, you're fine with them as long as they're appropriate, right?
Absolutely, and
Okay.
and it's really hard to make a general comment on it. It absolutely needs to be specifically looked after,
Okay.
with a focus on the people that live there.
On you made some mention of the term Indian reserves. I tried to follow the legislative language, and I know it's outdated, or it may be outdated, but maybe it'll, but anyways, that was the language of the legislation.
I was the Associate Minister of Aboriginal Relations, so I'm sensitive to that, and my comment was, if the First Nations are okay with that wording, I certainly don't have a problem.
Yeah, well, I mean, we've not heard from them on that. We're following what the legislation says. I'm confused on your comments on 15.2s. Yeah,
Well, 15.2 demands that it demands that you can only have a variance of 3. You can have 3 constituencies that break the rules.
I think it's 4.
No, I think there's 3 that you can,
Okay,
but
well,
they have to break 4 of the following rules.
I would
But
say
only-
meet 4 of the following conditions.
Let's say it's 4, it's fine. Yes, 4
Okay, so-
constituencies, but there's only 3 that can do that. I think you can break those rules in 3 cases.
Okay,
Here's the bottom line for me. I think it's over prescriptive to,
we've only used 1 in our report.
okay, but I think that you should open it up and say we should do more perhaps.
Okay.
We shouldn't
Okay,
even
I'm-
have that
I'm-
restriction. Why is the restriction in the legislation if you've only had 1? Maybe somebody else in a future commission wants to have 4 or
Okay.
5, is
Well,
my point.
I'm not sure I'm following you, but I don't
Yeah.
want to prolong it. I'll excuse you, and if you can stay, maybe over the lunch hour, we can have a further
Oh,
conversation.
yeah, I'll put some more money in my meter.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
We're bound by the meters.
Yeah. And our next, Michael Mattioti. Please take a seat and just give me a minute here. Okay, sorry, sir. Please identify yourself and tell us what electoral division you're in and which ones you wish to comment on.
Yeah, sure. Good morning, Commissioners. My name is Michael Mathiote, and I live in Edmonton City Centre. and I registered to speak because I took the time to read the interim report carefully and review the population data behind it. And I understand the constraints that this commission is working under. And I want to be clear at the outset, I do not believe this commission has full freedom to solve the problem that it's been given. This observation is central to my remarks. Under the current legislation, the number of seats is capped at 89, and only 2 new seats are permitted. At the same time, the commission has correctly concluded that further consolidation of rural and northern ridings would undermine effective representation by creating districts that are geographically too large for a single MLA to serve, and not to mention the Carter decision. So I agree with that conclusion. Given these constraints, I understand the trade-offs in the report, and as the previous gentleman alluded, you have actually mentioned, things in the report. And so, Edmonton effectively, there's consolidation, a hybrid riding, and so that, they get a net gain of 1. I think Calgary gets a net gain of 1. In the rural Alberta, there's, I think, was it consolidation of 2 seats? Was it 4? Anyway, offset partially by the growth in the Airdrie-Cochrane area. Anyway, from a mechanical perspective, I understand why these choices were worked. Where I want to focus on is what the updated population data applies about how quickly this map will age. And in your report, you've used the data from 2024 mid-year, and the data for 2025 came out 6 days ago. And so the current, I think the current total population, sorry, give me 1 second here, is 5,029,346, which gives us a provincial average of 56,510 per riding. This is an increase of roughly 3% in a single year compared to the interim report baseline. More importantly, this growth is not evenly distributed. Edmonton and Calgary are growing faster than the provincial average. Suburban areas are growing faster still, and rural and northern regions are growing more slowly. Even where rural populations increase in absolute terms, they fall below parity because the provincial average keeps rising. The result is, even a well-designed redistribution becomes outdated almost immediately and always in the same direction. I initially came prepared to oppose the core merger and the creation of a hybrid state riding in Edmonton, but after working through the numbers, I've reached a different conclusion. Even if this commission were to reverse that decision, which I understand it cannot, the result would simply be dilution of the urban vote elsewhere. This is not a failure of the boundary design. It is a structural consequence of the framework. The arithmetic is unavoidable. Urban populations, so yeah, the arithmetic is unavoidable. If the number of seats are capped and you can't reduce the number of rural seats, and population is increasing in the urban areas, then the only result is going to be dilution of the urban vote. That is, and so, and this is reflected in the proposals that are in the interim report. Therefore, urban voters must, so urban populations are increasing their share of voters' populations, number of seats is capped, rural seats cannot be further reduced without violating effective representation. Therefore, urban voters must absorb the imbalance. No configuration of boundaries within the current legislation can eliminate that outcome. At best, it redistributes where the dilation appears. And so, just looking at the numbers from the 2025 the 2025 estimates for July 1st, published by the Office of Statistics and Information, can already infer certain things. Like, for example, on your report, Drumheller Stettler is already at like 23%. by the next election, it'll hit or go over the 25%. In fact, even with the 2025 information, it is probably very, very close, less than 1% going over it. There are also several ridings that have probably gone over the 15%. This would be like Fort McMurray, Lac La Biche, Fort McMurray, Wood Buffalo, Slave Lake and Westlock, and Mackenzie, as we already know, is over the 25%. I understand that the plus or minus 25% is often treated as the outer constitutional guardrail, but the plus or minus 15% functions as an early warning sign. As an early warning line. It signals the representation quality is beginning to erode and future drift is likely. In a fast-growing populations, ridings that start near minus 10% will cross minus 15% quickly, long before the next redistribution. We already see this happening in the updated data. Ridings that were previously inside the range are now crossing it, not because of boundary choices, but because growth in urban Alberta is pushing the average faster than the framework can respond. The plus minus 15% is a predictive indicator of structural stress, not a snapshot. So my concern, therefore, is not that the map is careless. My concern is that the legislation guarantees persistent, worsening urban vote dilution regardless of how careful the map is. And that has three consequences. Urban underrepresentation will re-emerge quickly after redistribution. The Commission will be forced to rely increasingly on Section 15 justifications, and public confidence in electoral fairness will erode, not because of bad faith, but because the system cannot keep up with growth. So I'm not asking the Commission to redraw Edmonton. What I'm asking, I hope, is more realistic. I ask that the final report explicitly state that under the current statutory seat cap, ongoing urban vote dilution is mathematically unavoidable. Boundary adjustments alone cannot resolve this, and future legislation should reconsider the seat cap, redistribution frequency, or other growth-responsive mechanisms. Putting that conclusion on the record matters. It clarifies that this is not a failure of the Commission, but a limitation of the framework you are required to operate within. Thank you for your time and the work that you are doing.
Mr. Matthiotti, thank you so much for a real punchy and comprehensive presentation. I'm going to limit it to one question per side, just to kind of catch up. Mr. Evans or Ms. Sampson?
No questions. Thank you for your work.
Thank you for your work. That was very well said, that the system can't keep up. Thank you.
Which one?
No questions. Good. Thank you so much for being here.
I'm doing something that I almost never do. And it's like I entirely agree with you. And I wonder if we can get a copy of your presentation.
Please provide a
Mr.
copy
Roth,
to Mr. Roth.
Mr. Roth is.
Yeah.
I'd be happy to take a copy of it, because I'd like to review it at our leisure.
Okay. I'd like to comment on a couple of things. First of all, I don't think we can go the step to 2025. I'm quite certain we have agreed as a commission, we're going to have a standard and we're going to stick to it. We're not happy, but no census is perfect. And so that's the one thing. Secondly, you perfectly identified the tripartite issue that we deal with. And that is, in order to provide effective representation, we either need a lot more seats, or we take seats out of the rural to accommodate the cities. But you said, or dilute the urban vote as the third option. That's how I understood it. I would phrase it a little differently. I would phrase it as the courts have given us the option as hybrid or blended ridings. And I'm not sure if I understood you correctly, but I try to shy away from dilution, terms like dilution. However, I did really like your early warning sign of 15%. I think I may plagiarize that in the report. So, thank you very much. If you can provide it to Mr. Roth, we'd appreciate it.
Thank you for being here.
Thank you very much.
Our next,
Yes.
our next presenter is Trena Bensowski. Was that mine? Was it yours? Sorry.
I don't know if I'm as good looking as Trina, but I'll have to do.
So you're not Trena.
No, sir.
Okay. Who are you?
My name is Matthew McLennan. I'm a counselor with Sturgeon County, second term, Division 3 counselor. I do have some prepared remarks, and they are on my phone, so they're a little bit challenging for me to read, but bear with me if I stare at my phone for a while. But I just wanted to give you a quick insight as to maybe perhaps some of my perspective. I've born
So
in...
just so organizationally here,
Yeah.
Trena booked this time for you? Is that
Correct.
Do you know who she is and all that?
She's our chief of staff.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
Okay.
Myself, I was born in Leduc, Alberta, raised there. Moved to the city of Edmonton to go to university and completed university in 2004 and lived in the city of Edmonton until 2014. And then I made the decision to move west, to move to Sturgeon County. So I've been living in Sturgeon County for over a decade now. And so I just thought that might help to preface some of the comments. Again, I want to thank you for the opportunity to provide input on behalf of Sturgeon County Council. We appreciate the Commission's work and the thoughtful consideration that has gone into the interim report. There is several significant changes being proposed, and we recognize the challenge of balancing representation across Alberta's growing population. Sturgeon County is pleased to see the proposed St. Albert Sturgeon riding name maintained, as it better reflects the unique character of our region and its close connection between urban and rural communities. We also believe the decision to keep its boundaries unchanged is a sound one. However, Council has deep concerns with the proposed changes to the Lac St. Anne Parkland riding. While we understand the intent is to move closer to the provincial population average, the outcome of these changes would, in our view, be detrimental to residents. The proposed 12% population increase represents considerable shift combined with a significant expansion of the geographic area. This would make it more difficult for constituents to access their MLA and likewise for the MLA to effectively serve their communities. Today, the constituency office of MLA Getson is located in Onaway, centrally positioned to serve residents across current riding. Under the proposed boundaries, residents in the north, such as those living in the Vega area, would face well over an hour's drive just to reach the office. For many residents across the north and outlying communities, such travel distances create barriers to access and engagement. The proposed riding also brings together communities with very different local priorities. The needs of residents living near St. Albert or the Edmonton border are not the same as those in the far north of the riding. That diversity of needs makes equitable and effective representation a real challenge. Council is also concerned about the broader trend we continue to see, a gradual erosion of the rural representation in the legislature. The last boundary revision already shifted seats towards urban centers, and this report appears to continue in that direction. All newly added seats are in Edmonton and Calgary, with more blended urban-rural ridings across the province. While it is true that most Albertans live in cities, we cannot overlook the rural Alberta contribution. The majority of the province's land base and economic activity takes place in rural centers. Rural issues are just as significant as urban ones, but they are different, and they are compounded by distance and access. Meeting your MLA should not require setting aside a full day. Sturgeon County Council respectfully urges the Commission to revisit the proposed boundaries for Lac St. Anne Parkland and consider maintaining them as they are today. The existing population remains well within the legislative threshold, and keeping current boundaries would reduce confusion for residents and support more equitable access to representation. And just a kind of a personal comment to conclude is I've seen even in my area, which is the Division 3 area, which is just west of St. Albert, and so it touches the St. Albert boundary. And I go as far west as west of 779, Lac St. Anne County is to the west of us. And even within that area, we see a real divergence of priorities. Recently, St. Albert, 3 years ago, annexed a portion of Sturgeon County. And so there's real challenges around where rural meets urban. And the priorities are even different from, a few miles away from St. Albert to 779, the highway there. So thank you for your time. I appreciate your position. And if there's any questions, I'd be happy to try and answer them.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Clark, Dr. Martin, there you
I'm actually focused now on this map of Lac St. Anne Parkland. And so you feel it is far too sprawling and produces many confusions and complications. Is that correct?
Yes, I would say the biggest concern that we have is focused more on the distance, I believe. So it's more the travel time towards meeting with the MLA. Before I presented here today, I was curious if there was an online option, and what I've come to find is the online and the virtual options are good, but there's something important about face-to-face contact. I mean, there's so many nonverbal cues that you get when you speak with residents or people face-to-face. So we really feel that's very important, and the further distance a resident needs to travel really impedes that connection. And then likewise for the MLA to be able to physically be in all of the areas.
Can I ask one question about this area?
Sure.
City of St. Albert annexed, is that what this dotted line may represent? That's their city boundary.
Yes.
Quite a bit of it's in a different riding.
The annex area, so I'm actually, just to the west, there's Big Lake there. So I'm west, and then I go up to just south of River Kabar. So the area that St. Albert annexed was north of Highway 2 primarily, and then west to Carrot Creek. So the area sort of in the highlighted to my right is not sort of the newly annexed area.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
Good.
Thank you. Mr. Evans or Ms. Sampson?
No questions for me. Thank you for coming and providing us additional submissions.
Thank you very much.
Thank you kindly. Have a good day.
Our next presenter is Victor Carpe.
Thank you, guys. Yeah, normally I work in an office, or I work at home actually, and so the blinds go down and all of the natural light comes in, so it's a lot to sit in a hotel like this with this lighting for 5 or 6 hours. I'm not used to it, so thank you guys so much for listening to all of the presentations and everything else. Mine's for a specific area, the Sherwood Park boundaries. So I moved to the Edmonton area 4 years ago from Calgary to Sherwood Park, and I've grown to love Sherwood Park and the community there. I have lots of friends in Strathcona County. I go there for a lot of different church events, community events, and I know a lot of the schools there well and the people who teach. So I'm very connected with the Sherwood Park community. And what I want to talk about, if we go to the current Sherwood Park boundaries, if that's possible, on the screen.
Yeah, just...
Thanks, and I speak quickly, so maybe that'll save you guys some time. We'll see. So right now you can see that little box there going what used to be a part of the Strathcona Sherwood Park riding. That area there is Heritage Hills. The current boundaries for Sherwood Park in terms of the urban division have been existing there for well over a decade. So I would argue that in Heritage Hills, since it's been represented by the east side of the riding for 10 years, to abruptly make this artificial cut into that side and loop it into Sherwood Park doesn't make sense. It's sort of an invisible neighborhood line that doesn't make sense with the history of Sherwood Park currently. And so it would disrupt longstanding community ties, the connection that they've had to their MLA for 10 years. And so there's a few problems there with splitting Heritage Hills. And I'm also here today because there's a few nurse shift workers who can't be here who've submitted reports on suggestions for how to change the Sherwood Park boundary a little bit to include all of the Strathcona County residents who are currently under the representation of Fort Saskatchewan-Vegreville. And so my idea is pretty straightforward. Rather than carving up the Sherwood Park urban area, the Commission can instead adjust population and representation by extending the constituency into the northern part of Strathcona County, where there are strong existing ties and shared municipal priorities already. So what I would propose is to the west, the constituency of Sherwood Park would follow the North Saskatchewan River, which coincides with the Strathcona County boundary. And to the north, it would follow the Fort Saskatchewan city limits up to Highway 15, and then follow Highway 15 east to the county boundary at Range Road 204. And to the east, follow Strathcona County boundary south along Elk Island National Park down to the Highway 16. And then to the south, follow Highway 16 west back to Highway 21. And the reason for this, the configuration would not disrupt the urban divide that exists between the two ridings. Secondarily, it would hit the goals of having 53 to 54,000 residents in the area. And then most importantly, a big priority when we're looking at local maps is there's municipal levels of government, there's the Strathcona County levels of government, and they're supposed to connect to the provincial and to the federal in a manner that makes it easy for politicians to represent their constituents well. And so if you look at what I'm proposing to take out of Fort Saskatchewan-Vegreville and loop into Sherwood Park, the places there in Strathcona County include residents who vote there, who pay property taxes to Strathcona County and to Sherwood Park. And so it would ensure effective representation and that the whole of Sherwood Park is under two MLAs, the same way that the map's trying to do with Lethbridge and other areas to keep things in good correspondence. Another thing that I'll add is that a lot of the things that exist in the north of Highway 16, like the multi-purpose recreation facility, anchored by the Sherwood Park Crusaders, not the Fort Saskatchewan Crusaders, and the Point Agricultural Events Center, and the Warren Thomas Josephburg Aerodrome, those are all in Strathcona County and should be looped provincially into Sherwood Park. And the other thing I'll mention is that the airport in the north of Highway 16 area is operated by Strathcona County. But the name for it, if you look, is Josephburg, which is really interesting. So, yes, because the residents pay property taxes in there, they vote, and they're inside of the Strathcona County, I think it makes sense for that area to be under one. I'll add, So in terms of why I'm here, again, Kara Byrne is somebody who submitted a submission to make this amendment to have Strathcona County included into Sherwood Park. She's a shift worker and a nurse and can't be here today. There's Ron and Nadine, Lisa and Claudio, Daniel, Lachette. I'm good friends with the Duggins, who have an acreage in the Strathcona County area and have a whole bunch of cows. They also have 6 kids, so it's harder for them to be here today. So if you look at all of the proposals, there's a lot of people who live in north of Highway 16, and for the purpose of them communicating with their MLA, who they have for representing them in Strathcona County, I think there's a lot of projects in that north of Highway 16 corridor where Fort Saskatchewan-Vegreville has something like 20 different places to represent in it. It absolutely makes sense that the Sherwood Park should go under 2, and that could be done. Even if you look at Strathcona, Sherwood Park, Strathcona County, the eastern part, right now it's looped to go all the way down to Beaumont. And I mean, if we can keep those 2 places with the municipalities under 2 provincial ridings, I think it just makes for a better ladder of communicating and representation. that's it on the local side. And then I'll just say, on a broader level, I just went to Saskatoon for a week after Christmas for a wood carving thing, just to take a little bit of a break before going back to work. And it was 5.5 hours of driving from Edmonton to Saskatoon. I'm 21 years old. My back is sore from doing that. So I'll just add, on an overall level, I know two people who live in farther rural ridings, and one of them likes their MLA a lot and says that he/she, I'll keep it anonymous, is really good at being present in the riding. And the amount of driving that's done to be able to say that they're present like that, and I just can't imagine their poor backs from all that driving. I do think that if there's the 15% variant rule, absolutely that should serve to help the rural ridings that have a really long driving distance. I mean, the northern riding right now, Mackenzie, it's a total of 7 hours to drive from one end of the riding to the other. And if you're expecting your MLA to be present and to do that, we need to keep those in mind. And I'll just add that I've lived in the city my entire life, in Sherwood Park, Calgary, and Edmonton. I've kind of been in all three of those for my lifetime. And one of my favorite things to do in my free time is to try to connect to people who have farms and volunteer to do some work with fences, or to get to observe and see how they milk cows and manage and have relationships with the livestock. And there's just something to be said about precious rural common sense. And I think it's important that if that 15% variant rule is there, we need to make sure to preserve rural Alberta voices in our democracy as much as possible. And they do have unique needs. And I mean, on another note, I know rural people who they've given up complaining about rural crime because it's hard to reach their MLAs, and they don't see that as a possibility, and they take matters, it's just different. So that's a broader level. So that's it. If you guys have any questions, I'm happy to take them. Yeah.
You are familiar with the saying, a picture is worth 1,000 words?
Yes.
Have you prepared a draft map of what you just described? Or has someone in your group done that and submitted it to us?
Yeah, I could send you an email
You
right after
yet?
with one.
Okay, please do it.
Yeah,
Please do it.
I'll do that. I'll talk to Aaron, and I would have had it. It was just.
Okay, please do it.
Yep, you got it.
Questions on this side?
No questions for me.
No questions. Thank you for the
You're welcome.
presentation.
Yeah.
Your arguments are equally acceptable
Dr. Martin.
with respect to north of the Yellowhead, adding that large parcel of the county to the riding Strathcona Sherwood Park, as it is applicable to adding them to the mighty hamlet of Sherwood Park riding. So which would you prefer?
Between, the hamlet and.
Well, you prefaced your remarks about the whole area up and including Josephburg as appropriate, you reckon, to go into the Sherwood Park riding, whereas is equally applicable, it seems to me, on the same argument for adding them to the Strathcona County Sherwood Park.
I see. Okay, yes, yeah, that's a good point. Well, I think there's something beautiful to be said about an urban riding like Sherwood Park just outside of Edmonton having a rural contingent. I mean, it makes for a good balance of interests. They're still a part of the same municipality. And in terms of whether you could loop it into Strathcona Sherwood, I mean, I'm not for sure what a revision for that would look like, because I know the current map has a little bit of Beaumont into the eastern side, right? So, I mean, what I'll have to do is I'll have to send you guys a nice, beautiful, clear image with the proposal, and I can even CC the many people north of Highway 16 who want to be under Sherwood Park, because I'm primarily here today because there's a lot of people who want to present, and it's hard to come somewhere in person. It's a delight too, good opportunity to practice public speaking. Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Kirby. Much
You're welcome.
appreciated. We have one more presenter this morning, which we've tacked on, Sandra Houston. Good morning.
Good morning.
Have a seat. Make yourself comfortable, and
Thank you.
tell us where you're from and which riding you want to comment
I am a resident of Edmonton Highlands Norwood, and I more want to comment on Edmonton as a whole.
Okay.
I'd like to start by thanking you for the work that you're doing and the work that you will continue to do. I know that this is a super challenging project to try and get the balance and also to address all of the concerns that many people are bringing to you. I am concerned, however, about the growth in the inner city. That's not to say that I am against growth. In fact, I am a big proponent of greater density, and I really don't like to see the big urban sprawl that is happening. But you know, in my own neighborhood, there are across the street from me, there was a tiny little bungalow that was torn down and replaced by a couple of huge skinny houses, both of which have room for 2-bedroom suites in the basement. Down the street from me, another little cottage-like house was replaced by 2 skinny houses. An empty lot around the corner from us, where it had been vacant for years, now has townhouse complex. A lot that had a small store on it has been replaced by an apartment building with several stories, and they're not yet all filled just yet. So I think that the density is going to continue. The city, of course, has been encouraging density, and I know that that has resulted, certainly in my neighborhood, and I know some friends who live in these cottage, or not these, what do they call them, garden suites. More people are putting basement suites in their homes to help them to pay mortgages. And that is just going to continue as time goes on. I understand that urban ridings will always have larger populations than rural ridings. I understand the need for some fairness in that, as some of the other people have talked about, the driving, the distance for MLAs who represent rural ridings. I also think there's a question of fairness to constituents. People who live, or constituencies in Edmonton, often the MLA offices are dealing with very complex issues and a lot of casework. I've spoken with a lot of constituency assistants, and I know that there is a lot more casework often in the inner city than there is in rural ridings. And that is unfair to citizens when they cannot get the same level of service. MLAs who represent inner city ridings don't have a budget that allows them to hire more staff to serve the constituents who live in their constituencies. And of course, there's not more hours in the day for MLAs to be available and accessible to a greater number of constituents who need and want service and assistance. So in particular, I'm concerned about the elimination, or the proposed elimination, of Edmonton Riverview and splitting that between Edmonton, Glenora, West Henday, and McClung. All 3 of those constituencies are growing. There are new developments in each of those constituencies. There are infills, there are the garden suites, there are the basement suites. And so those constituencies, I believe, will be out of whack in terms of the population that they hold. I also think that Riverview has it's a community that, despite the fact that it's on 2 sides of the river, has a community of interest. It has the University of Alberta in there as well, which is probably has some population that has not been captured by the census. So it probably has a larger population than we have reported. So thank you again for the opportunity to speak with you. I hope that my thoughts and those of others will be taken into consideration.
Thank you very much, Ms. Houston. Questions on your side?
Yeah, a couple of questions for you. You mentioned casework.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not exactly sure that I understand what you mean by that.
People who have concerns or people who need assistance accessing government programs, getting help with a whole variety of things. It's called casework by constituency assistants.
Okay. And then that brings me to my next question, which is, it seems, or more of a comment, it seems like what has been going on and has been consistent from all MLAs and people expressing their concerns about being able to do the work of the MLA and the constituency office needs to do is really a staffing issue. For example, the casework is going to be by and large done by the staff, not the MLA. And that's a consistent concern, whether it's rural or urban, the staffing issues. It's nothing that we can actually deal with.
Right.
But it seems that there's been a consistent conflating of the shortage of staff and the needs of staff, and we're transposing that onto, well, this is impacting effective representation by the MLA. And so I think it's important that we draw a distinction there. And then just one other comment. Over the last 3 years, Edmonton has, by the city's own, own reporting, had a population increase over 3 years of 140,000, just to put the growth into context.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I might add that, yes, you're absolutely correct about the staffing issue, but constituents also want to talk to their MLA. They also want appointments with their MLA, and there's only so many hours in the day, and MLAs have a myriad of responsibilities that they need to attend to, not just meeting their constituents. And frankly, that's not often understood by constituents.
Thank you.
Mr. Clark?
No questions, but yeah, rest assured, we've heard a number of submissions that make exactly the same case, and I'm just doing a bit of work right now and looking into where some of that growth has happened within Edmonton that Mr. Evans references. The growth has been substantial. One of our questions is, and I've said this to a number, including folks outside of Edmonton and Calgary and rural areas, it's not just a question of absolute growth, because I think most places, not all, most places in Alberta are growing in absolute terms. How are we growing in each area in relative terms to the overall? So Alberta's grown 20% in the last 7 or 8 years. And so which areas have grown? And then to your point, which areas will grow into the future? So we also, to a degree, to borrow a phrase from a great Edmontonian, skate to where the puck is going to be, to whatever degree we can. And that's a little tricky to sort of tease out all those different pieces. But just rest assured that all of that is in the conversation that we're having here. So thank you so much.
I mean, I might add, I looked at what you've done in the southeast of Edmonton, and I thought that was a brilliant way that you had created the
Could you
the
repeat
new.
that for
Yes,
the record?
exactly.
I looked at that very carefully because I worked in that area and worked in the community there, and I thought that was very forward thinking.
Thank you.
Ms. Houston, thanks very much. And you made one reference to a term that I think just forces us to clarify our language. Because when you talked about the casework and you said it was unfair to citizens. Okay, MLAs represent more than citizens. They represent more than voters.
You're
And
correct.
that's not a criticism. It's just a highlight to us to say there's sloppy language in
Yeah,
this
my
whole
apologies,
business.
yeah.
No, that was not, but it was a highlight. Yeah, we tend to forget the categories and the clarification, and so I just highlighted that and thought, okay, in our report, we've got to clarify our terminology
Yes.
a bit more, because when there's ambiguous or unclear language, it's easy to criticize and it's easy to have arguments over things.
Yeah.
So thank you.
If I had heard somebody else say that, heard somebody else say citizens, I would have made the same criticism.
Yeah, okay,
So
good,
thank you for
good,
that. I
good.
appreciate you bringing that up. Okay, thanks very much.
Thank you so much, and we will close our morning session and reconvene at 1:30 this afternoon.